Good afternoon. May 5th, 2022. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Charlottesville City School Board, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. So if you will please join me now in a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. And if you will please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion to allow 3 of our board members to attend remotely.
I so move.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And now if we can have roll call of board members, please, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Bryant,
Present.
Ms. Bryson Wurzberger,
Here.
Ms. Dooley,
Present.
Dr. Kraft,
Present.
Ms. McKeever,
Here.
Mr. Morris,
Here.
and Ms. Torres.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now if I may have a motion for approval of our proposed agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
I second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. All right, now we are at our first opportunity for comments from members of the community. Please, if you so choose to make comment, come to the podium, state your name and your address, and remember that you have 3 minutes to make comment. And for anybody, I don't believe there was anybody here in the media center that was signed up, but if you'd like to, please come on forward.
Hi, my name is Imogen Campbell, and I'm a fifth grader at Walker Upper Elementary. My teachers are Miss Luce, Mr. Snyder, and Miss Drain. I'm here today because I hope the school board allows teachers to collectively bargain. Teachers deserve a good pay and a say in how the school is run. The salary they get now is lower than they deserve, especially in an expensive town like Charlottesville. Teachers work really hard, really long hours. I have forgotten my water bottle or jacket a lot of times and seen my teachers still working when I go to get them. They work hard for us, so we should give them the respect they deserve by allowing collective bargaining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name. Hi, my name is Gudrun Campbell. I'm a freshman here at CHS, and I've been a Seville City School student since I was a kindergartner at Burnley Moran. I'm here today to encourage the school board to adopt the collective bargaining resolution submitted by the CEA. As a student, I've seen how hard my teachers work and sacrifice for their students. Every teacher works hard both during school hours and outside of them for less pay than they deserve. Collective bargaining would help teachers to get the pay and conditions they're entitled to. It would also benefit Charlottesville students. Well-paid teachers with good working conditions have less to worry about, allowing them to focus on the students. And low pay and challenging conditions cause teachers to leave for other cities and states. To keep the best teachers, we need to treat them like the best teachers. Collective bargaining will help them accomplish that. Collective bargaining also erases discriminatory pay disparities because all teachers are working under the same contract. Wisconsin had no pay disparities when they allowed collective bargaining. Since they repealed that right, a pay gap has opened that means a young female teacher will lose an entire year of pay of her career relative to her male counterparts. Thank you so much for your time. And as you move forward with collective bargaining, I ask that you please include teachers in the process as the collective bargaining agreement is shaped. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Good evening, Chairperson Torres, Dr. Gurley, and members of the board. Last month, we presented our resolution backed by support from nearly 75% of your employees in support of collective bargaining. We anticipated subsequent calls for conversation and collaboration, but we have not heard from you. The only item on tonight's agenda related to collective bargaining is a request from Dr. Gurley to work on behalf of the school board to craft a collective bargaining resolution. The memo on the board website states, quote, "By granting the authorization, the board will allow Dr. Gurley to work with various stakeholder groups and the school board attorney to develop a proposed resolution for consideration. Additionally, your authorization will allow him to work in collaboration with the Charlottesville Education Association." The CEA is asking that tonight you clarify to the superintendent the role the CEA will play in developing a resolution for bargaining. Is it enough that he is allowed to work in collaboration with CEA, or is it something the board will require? There's a big difference in that language to us. To be clear, the CEA is asking to be part of the process from the onset. It is time to break the pattern of educator input after the fact. We do not want a process that relies on lawyers or mediators to reach agreement. If we are all sitting together from the inception, this would be unnecessary. By including us as equal partners now in developing the resolution, we are engaging in the type of conversations and cooperation that will set the ground rules that support the type of collaborative negotiations we all want to establish. Please make this commitment to your employees tonight. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jen Horn. Thank you, board and Dr. Gurley, for including the collective bargaining resolution on the agenda and for listening to my thoughts face to face. In my 20 years of teaching, I have filled out myriad surveys from state, division, school that have asked all of the right questions. Are we teachers able to create? Do we feel that we have agency over our classroom learning? Do we feel like a valued part of an educational community? Do we feel respected? Unfortunately, no matter what the intent of those inroads to teacher input might be, we teachers have come to see them as more of a formality, a box checked. What are the results of those surveys? When are they discussed with teachers? What actions are taken to realize teacher ideas and initiatives? When are those creative, collaborative community teacher, admin, division, roundtables happening? Yes, there is the TAC, and there is this opportunity for public comment at each board meeting. Thank you. But why must teacher input always be reactionary? It seems that any direct interaction with teachers beyond the impersonal medium of an end-of-year Google Forms survey is for the purpose of addressing a problem. And oftentimes the problems are the result of programs and policies that teachers had no voice in creating. How much better would this whole world-changing endeavor of education be if teacher voice were at the inception of initiatives? How much time and money would it save? How might it boost teacher morale and retention? How much better would it be for our kids? It is in this spirit of teachers being a part of inception rather than reception, action rather than reaction, that I ask that the collective bargaining resolution be crafted with teachers at the table. Please do not take our resolution under advisement or send out another survey. Please let teachers be co-authors with the board and Dr. Gurley of this collective bargaining resolution. Please sit down with us face to face. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else in the media center?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Ray Regan. I'm a teacher at Walker Upper Elementary and the co-chair of the organizing committee. A month ago, we stood before you to bring a resolution supported by 86% of CCS teachers. After that meeting and hearing the comments from the board, I was hopeful. Today, I stand before you discouraged and confused. At that meeting and in the following days, it was expressed to us by members of the board that they would like to move forward with forming a task force to start negotiations on the proposed resolution. Days later, we received notice from Dr. Gurley saying that he was going to ask for authorization from this board to write his own resolution, not a resolution for the teachers, not a resolution for CCS, but his own resolution. And the question I have is why? Why are we wasting taxpayer dollars to pay a lawyer to write a new resolution when we already have one? A lawyer who has a track record of making the process more difficult and expensive than it needs to be. Why are we wasting time writing a new resolution when we have a perfectly good one ready to go? Why are we going against what 86% of teachers are in support of? Why are we taking 2 steps back when we have a clear path forward? Based on the reactions of the board members at the last meeting, I feel like Dr. Gurley's proposed resolution isn't even what the board wants. And I certainly know it is not what the teachers of this district want. We are ready to start this process with you now. We are ready to set the tone for bargaining now. Let's set a tone that shows that you trust us. You trust the work that we have done, and you trust us to be a part of negotiating this resolution. We have shown you we are ready. We have collaborated with you every step of the way. Let's continue to do so. And let's continue to do so starting now, not later, not while we wait for someone else to write a resolution that might not be in the best interest of the staff. Members of the board, I am asking you today not to give Gurley authorization to write his own resolution, but to give him authorization to form a task force to work on negotiating the current proposed resolution. Thank you for your time and all that you do.
Good evening, thank you. You all know me by now. My name is David Koenig. I'm the parent of a second grader at Greenbrier Elementary. She's here tonight to support her teachers. I'm also a history teacher at Lugo McGinnis Academy and co-chair of the CEA organizing committee. We live in an interesting moment right now in the history of the fight for workers' rights in our country. And forgive me if I sound like a history teacher, it's just what I am. When union membership was at its peak in the 1950s and 1960s, our country saw a great expansion of the middle class and the greatest shared prosperity in our history. Beginning in the 1970s, though, union membership began a long and steady decline due to a relentless assault by the corporate class in the form of union busting, threats to move factories, lobbying, and propaganda. Today, union membership is at its lowest point since World War II, at approximately 10% of all workers. Not surprisingly, economic inequality has reached nauseating levels. But there are signs of hope. In the last year, beginning in Buffalo, New York, there has been a movement to unionize Starbucks stores. From that first successful drive in Buffalo, the number of unionized Starbucks has now reached 250 or so, including stores in Richmond, Virginia. Workers at a huge Amazon distribution center in Staten Island organized the independent Amazon Labor Union and last month won their NLRB election. And in Virginia, public employees across the state are seeking to exercise the collective bargaining rights that were stripped from them 2 generations ago and finally restored last year. An interesting aspect of the efforts by workers at Amazon and Starbucks to exercise their rights is that the obscenely rich owners of these companies publicly portray themselves as champions of progressive causes and opponents of Trumpism. But when it comes to accepting their workers' demand for a seat at the table, a basic and fundamental piece of any political philosophy based on morality and justice, suddenly they are not so progressive. They employ the same union-busting tactics of intimidation, coercion, and litigiousness that we would expect from the Koch brothers or the Waltons. And here in our own community, a supposed progressive island in the sea of conservative Central Virginia, we have seen a similar dynamic. The Charlottesville City Council continues to delay enacting a collective bargaining resolution for the city's employees, needlessly spending money on a consultant to make the process more expensive and more contentious. In Albemarle County, the school board has thus far refused to even speak with our fellow educators after they presented the board with a proposed collective bargaining resolution and authorization cards signed by a clear majority of their staff. I know where I stand in this fight for employees' rights and democracy in the workplace. I stand with the working people at Starbucks and Amazon. I stand with the transportation workers and firefighters in the city of Charlottesville. I stand with my fellow educators in Albemarle County. I stand with teachers and staff of Charlottesville Public Schools. I ask you tonight to show us where you stand by requiring Superintendent Gurley to work with us to craft a collective bargaining resolution that you can approve at your next meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vernon Lechty, and I'm a resident of the city of Charlottesville. I want to speak to you tonight to ask that you adopt the resolution for collective bargaining that has been submitted by the Charlottesville Education Association. I also noticed on the agenda that Dr. Gurley has requested to draft a resolution for collective bargaining. I'm very happy to hear that Dr. Gurley wants to assist public education workers in formulating a resolution that will ensure the workers of Charlottesville City Schools have a say in what goes in to their compensation, benefits, and working conditions. It is great that Dr. Gurley partner with the CEA to formulate a collective bargaining resolution to be a part of this collaborative process with one another. The whole point of collective bargaining is for both the Charlottesville City School leadership to work with their employees who authorize the CEA to negotiate on their behalf. This process needs to be democratic and collaborative and should not rely solely on a draft resolution from the central office staff without the input and support from the CEA. Collective bargaining is necessary for workers to have a voice and more respect in their professions. Charlottesville City Schools has a chance to take the steps to begin this process by having the CEA work with Dr. Gurley on forming a resolution for collective bargaining. This will provide a great first step to show educational workers how the contract negotiation process can work to benefit all. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Lawn. I am the parent of one final Charlottesville City Schools student to have gone before him. And I'm standing here today to speak in solidarity with the teachers who would like to be at the table as part of this collective bargaining process. I just want to remind folks that right to work has deeply racist origins. It was created when politicians became concerned that if Black and white workers united, they might actually upend Jim Crow laws. And one in Virginia of the strikes that precipitated right to work laws in our state was the strike of Black nurses at the University of Virginia Hospital. And so given that history, I think it's especially important that Charlottesville City Schools create a process that honors teachers and centers their voices from the beginning. Thank you.
Hello, school board members and Superintendent Gurley. My name is Elizabeth Stark, and I'm the mother of a couple of Charlottesville City School children that you met earlier tonight, Gudrun and Imogen. We've been a Charlottesville City School family for their entire educational career, and we really value the education that the kids get here in Charlottesville. You know, I've been heartened to hear positive steps being taken toward collective bargaining, but as we know, the devil's in the details, and whether we have robust collective bargaining really depends on the decisions you make here tonight. The teachers are asking for a seat at the table. They're asking for a voice in this process. And I hope you will honor that because they do so much for our community, as I know you know. Thank you very much.
Good evening, board members. My name is Becca Saxon, and I'm a resident of the city of Charlottesville. I emailed you earlier this week about recent confusing messages from the city manager regarding collective bargaining. In his comment on Monday evening, he indicated that the school board could not negotiate contracts without council permission. He has since issued a statement that he was discussing the funding process and not your ability to authorize bargaining with your employees. I wanted to clarify to all of you that, as we have told you over the last few months, the educators in Charlottesville understand how the budget process and the need for city council to provide funding to the schools will impact the bargaining process. We understand that ultimately, the funding for any contract we negotiate will depend on the allocation of monies by city council. With that said, there is an agenda item tonight that will ask you to authorize Dr. Gurley to craft a resolution for bargaining. This is an exciting development, and I trust that you will approve it. However, I ask that in your approval, you also give him some direction about the role you expect the teachers and me, and possibly our attorney, to play in this process. We are all operating without a clear set of instructions, which is exciting and a little nerve-wracking. Having a clear understanding that you want your employees to be full partners in this process will set the tone of collaboration that you all have indicated you desire. Additionally, it will create a process that centers our shared local values and needs without giving outsized influence to people who are not familiar with our community and our expectations. We certainly understand that the substantive part of crafting the resolution may need to wait a couple of weeks until you all have an opportunity to develop a common vision of what you want and need from bargaining. While we are ready and eager to get started on the resolution, as I'm sure you heard tonight, the wait will be made easier if we know that our role is clear from the beginning. We want to make this process as collaborative, locally driven, democratic, and transparent as possible. If you agree with these broad goals, please give Dr. Gurley guidance to include your employees as full partners in developing the resolution that will be presented to you. Thank you.
Anybody else here? All right, I think we do have somebody, or we did have somebody in the waiting room online, if she is still there. No? There will be another opportunity towards the end of the meeting if you'd like to make public comment at that point. One more look. Not seeing her. Okay. All right. Any other last takers, last chance here? All right, thank you. We're going to move on at this point. And our next item on the agenda is student and staff recognitions. We have Dr. Baptist, I believe.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. It is always very exciting to be able to recognize certain groups of our employees for the hard work that they have done. And we have two groups tonight. The first are our nurses. The actual Nurses Day, I think, is one day next week, but since we're here tonight, we wanted to recognize our nurses because we know they are very, very hardworking. And during the last couple of years with COVID, they've definitely been on the front lines and done many, many things that go far and beyond what they expected to do as school nurses. They're not with us this evening, but I would like to read out their names just so the community will know who this wonderful cadre of nurses is. Sherry Eicher from Burnley Moran Elementary, Amy Sharon from Clark Elementary. We have two nurses who share the duty at Greenbrier, Ellen Muller and June Eshelton, or Jody as we know her. At Jackson Via, we have Marika, or as we know her, Dee Bell. Yay. At Johnson, we have Amy Peltier. At Venable, we have Sarah Kinney. At Walker Upper Elementary, we have Sarah Sutton. Buford Middle School, we have Stacy Oliver. And here at the high school, we've got Halima Walker. So we have a fantastic group of nurses. I am sad to say we're going to lose a couple of these for various reasons for next year. So as the community is watching, we are looking for school nurses to replace these wonderful ones that we have already. So please let us know if you're interested in being a nurse with the best school division in Virginia. But since they're not here, I still hope they're watching from home and that we will all give them a round of applause for their hard work. Second, we have Teacher Appreciation Week. We all know we couldn't do anything without our teachers, and we do appreciate the teachers, and we've heard a lot of wonderful people who are talking about appreciating our teachers now. I've been in a few of the schools this week, and I've seen lots of recognitions for the teachers and exciting and fun things going on, which is sad that we have 1 week out of the year to appreciate our teachers, because hopefully we appreciate them every day, every minute, every second. There is a resolution that you have in the board information. I won't read it to you because you can read it, but it is a resolution by our governor, who therefore is recognizing May 2nd through the 6th as Teacher Appreciation Week in our Commonwealth of Virginia, and call this observance to the attention of all our citizens, or of our citizens. So on behalf of all of us who are not in the classroom as teachers, I would like to say thank you to all of our teachers. I appreciate everything that you're doing. We've got the best teachers that we could have, and I'd like to give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baptist. All right, next we will move to, or for a motion for adoption of the consent agenda, please.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. And next,
Chair.
Dr. Gurley.
Madam Chair, I want to, on the consent agenda, we approved the Director of Accountability and Assessment position. And I want to introduce Ms. Carolyn Swift. She will be our new Director of Accountability and Assessments. And just to give you a little bit about her, she is she's a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, where she received a Bachelor's of Arts in Middle Grades Education. She graduated from the University of Scranton with a Master's of Science in Educational Leadership. Throughout her career, she served as a middle school math teacher, a math and curriculum coach and chair. She moved, and that was in North Carolina. And upon arriving in Charlottesville back in June of 2012, she was a middle school teacher over at Beaufort, where she also was the department chair. In her more recent years, she served as, I believe I saw, an instructional coach, and she has also been, now she's the math coordinator. And she has served us well, and the committee was just wowed by what she will bring to the position. And I will tell you that in my interview and meeting with her, I am just elated by the things that she will bring to the table. So I do want to welcome you, Ms. Swift, and this position will take effective July 1 of 2022. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And yes, congratulations. We are moving to an action item.
And we do have Dr. Baptist here with the approval of needing approval of the special education annual plan.
Good evening again. Last month, Ms. Katrina Lee, Supervisor of Special Education, provided information for you regarding special education in general for Charlottesville City Schools, and brought a draft of the flow-through or Title 6B grant that will need to be submitted this week. She explained the amount of funding, which for the school-age population is $1,170,042, which pays for all or parts of 12 different staff members, and then materials and supplies for special education. And then for what we call 619, which is our preschool, the amount of funding there is $46,090, and that pays for part of one preschool special education teacher. So each year we do ask that the board approve these grants so that we can submit those to the Department of Ed for funding.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion, please.
I will move that we approve the special education grants, if
Huh.
that's the right wording, or someone can fix
The
the wording.
Annual plan, 2022,
plan.
2023
Yeah.
annual.
That.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to items for discussion. Dr. Gurley.
Yes. We will have Dr. Odie come forward with the presentation of the consolidated application.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley. Tonight, Patrick Farrell, Intervention and Support Supervisor, will present the federal consolidated application for board review. This will be information only today, and we will bring it back in our June school board meeting for approval. Mr. Farrell?
Good evening, everyone. It's in very similar fashion to what Dr. Batcher was saying about the special education. For our title programs, we have a yearly application into the VDOE. And so what they do is they cover our 4 title programs that we currently are eligible to participate in. It's in there somewhere, I think. And basically what I want to do is, and it comes up kind of every year, people kind of forget which title program kind of goes with what. And so Title I is for at-risk students. That's typically for students we kind of identify through low-income measures like free reduced lunch. And so in Charlottesville, we have 5 school-wide programs for Title I, all our elementaries except for Venable. Title II, and I should say that grant program is usually in the neighborhood. It's pretty steady from year to year. It usually goes for about $1.4 million, and that's primarily used to fund teacher salaries, family engagements, and instruction materials. So that you go on to the second slide. I can just keep going. And so the second program is Title II, which is supporting effective instruction. And so for that is usually, again, just making sure that we try to either both improve student outcomes and support teacher professional learning with that. An additional use of that title program can be to to reduce class size. So for in Charlottesville City Schools for the past number of years, we've taken those funds and actually applied them to our 4 highest needs elementary schools, and giving 1 extra teacher for each school to make class size a little more smaller for more targeted instruction. Title III is for English learners and immigrant youth. And that's typically about $55,000. And that just gives an opportunity for more supplemental curriculum materials and training opportunities for our teachers who work with our English language learners. And then the last program is Title IV, which is student support and academic enrichment. And this one's a bit more of an open grant. And so that is there is basically 3 main focal points. The first is for supporting a well-rounded education. The second is for making sure that students have a safe and healthy environment to be in school. And the first is to kind of promote the use of the effective use of technology. We've been very blessed in Charlottesville City School. Kind of one of the other hats I wear is supporting our mental wellness and positive school culture programs that we primarily use Title IV money for our social emotional learning programs, professional learning, instruction materials that support that. And that's usually around $100,000 each year. So what I'll do is again, we'll come back next month for formal approval, but if anybody has any questions right now, I'd be happy to address them.
Board members, any questions? I'm going to study this line by line, and I'll have my questions for you next month. Thank you so much.
Next, we will have Ms. Powell and Mr. Lee with the school safety report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Gurley. I'm very pleased this evening to have with us Mr. Jason Lee, our Supervisor for Facilities Safety and Operations. Mr. Lee started with us last summer, and he's been instrumental in implementing our new safety model. And I'm pleased that he's here with us tonight to share an update regarding the model. So, Mr. Lee.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Gurley, and board members. It's a pleasure to be able to present our school safety report to you. As we try to refine this model, of course, we've analyzed what we've done this year, and we'll try to make improvements. And so we're going to share a bit of data and statistics that we've gathered as we kind of refine that process for you all. So just to overview the current safety model, of course, the school resource officers, we no longer have those in the building. We added extra support with the care and safety assistants. And I must say, we'll talk about some of the training that they've undertook this year. But again, I think they were an intricate part of the safety model. And I can't say enough that I believe that we picked the right people for the job. We have people that are really vested and really vested in the community and the students in the school. So can't say enough about them. We also added social emotional support counselors, school social workers as well. We work towards our door access control upgrades, and we partnered with community organizations as well. As far as CSA development, all of our CSAs have been certified by the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services as SSOs. The Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services identified our CSAs as SSOs. And because of that, they had to undergo the training that SSOs would have to undergo, which is 16 hours of training over 2 years. So again, as a part of that process, they're expected to attend regular scheduled trainings in order to get those hours of training. To date, they've done a lot of great things. As far as that development, some of the trainings they went to, SSO certified training, MANT training, relational and technical, community resilience, which deals with trauma-informed care. They've also done some work with Bob Garrity around mediation, restorative justice at EMU. They've done some threat assessment webinars, the ASSIST training, which is suicide prevention, also collective and vicarious trauma training. And currently, they're doing some current online behavior trends and updates. And the list goes on and on. The trainings are go on and on. And so they continue to learn and develop as we develop this model. Going to access control. This is a work in progress. As you can see, all schools right now currently have visitor buzzing systems where you have to buzz in and you are let into the building. We are working on a master rekey. Our current system it's old. I can't tell you exactly how old the system is, but of course, the older the key system is, the more you kind of lose track of keys. So we're working on doing a master rekey as well. Part of that, we're doing a full building access control, which will reduce the amount of keys needed for people to access buildings. We'll use fobs for entry into the building, which will definitely reduce keys that are distributed. So that would help that master rekey process as well. And we're also working on the visitor vestibules. Currently, we've completed Jackson, Valley, and Venable. Right now, we're in progress with CHS Johnson, Burley Moran, and the division office and annex as well. So we conduct school-wide drills. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory, so I won't bore you with all of the different drills that we do, but of course, we are in compliance with the state as far as the drills that we conduct each month and throughout the year. We also are in compliance with Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services as well. And part of that, we do a Virginia school safety audit through DCJS. The Virginia School Climate Survey is part of that. We administered that in January at CHS. We did get some results. We would have added the results to this current presentation, but the results came in Friday when this presentation was due for approval. So we didn't get to crunch the numbers and put them in, but we will share those numbers with you all as we crunch them. We also work to do the Virginia School Crisis Plan review and have certification. Again, we're currently reviewing that as well. The Virginia School Safety Survey is due August 31st, so we'll work towards that. And also the division survey and the safety audit are all apart. Those are all due by August 31st, and we will meet those deadlines. So a little bit about the incidents that we've seen this year and some of the calls that we've made to public agencies, including Charlottesville Police Department and Charlottesville Fire EMS and Malta agencies. So as of April 28th, when we had to submit this presentation, there was a total of 77 incidents that we had to call either CPD, Fire EMS, or Malta agents response. Out of those 77 incidents, 70% of those incidents were related to Charlottesville Police Department, and they responded. And the other 30% was Fire EMS and a multi-agency response. This is a respondents based on school percentages that was called. Of course, our secondary levels made more calls for incidents than the rest of our schools. Around 30%, a little bit over 30% of the calls made was from Charlottesville High School. Again, a little close to 20% from Beaufort, and the elementary schools and Lugo made up the rest of the percentages there. This is a breakdown of the incidents, the type of incidents that were reported. 33% of those were medical, probably correlates with the 30% EMS fire that we see as well. Around 13% drug-related offenses, threats, verbal, social media threats at 28%, vandalism at 14%, vehicle-related incidents at 5%, and then we have 4.2% of those incidents that have been called in were for assaults. So we did conduct a school safety survey, which is one of the bigger undertakings that we took on. We created a survey for ourselves. We do again participate in the DCJS survey, but we wanted to do a survey that was specific to our model as we have changed the model to see how things were going. So we produced a survey, and the purpose of the survey was to analyze CHS and Beaufort students' staff perceptions on how safe they were in the building. So we conducted that survey last month. And the survey also analyzed the CSA and the mental health professionals and their impact on the school's climate and culture. Again, that was a big part of the new model. We did get great results and great participation results. 1,020 students, grades 7 through 12 participated. We had 112 staff members from both Beaufort and CHS to participate as well. We'll go through some of the numbers as we go to the next slides, but I just wanted to let you know that the scale that we used was based on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 was being strongly disagree, and 5 strongly agree. And there was a few questions at the end where there were multiple questions that were pre-populated, multiple answers that were pre-populated that the individuals could select from. So we'll share those as well. This is just a breakdown. So about, I would say 30% of the respondents from students were Beaufort students. The other 70% were high school students. So about half of, a little over half of both student bodies, populations participated in the survey. As far as staff respondents, it's about 50-50, middle school to Beaufort to CHS respondents. And we also had individuals from Lugo as well to participate in the survey. So going a little bit into the responses, we see here the first 3 questions, the first 2 questions really talk about the specific personnel that we use, the CSAs and the social emotional counselors that we added to the safety model. As you'll see, it's going to be kind of a bell-shaped curve for both groups as far as for students. So we see that the first question was CSAs in my school have helped maintain safety and have been helpful to me or others. And so we see it's kind of a bell-shaped curve. The middle is kind of neutral. And again, I can't speak for students, but I can only kind of think to myself, as dealing with students, some students really don't seek the support of others. And so some of these people or the students that are kind of neutral could be students who just didn't seek the support, or they could be students who don't know the services that CSAs actually provide. So we can do a better job of pushing in and allowing them to understand the services that CSAs could bring to them. And that's just me speculating, kind of, as I analyze it and break it down, kind of trying to make sense of those numbers. Staff on the other side, you will see that there is a curve where they agree more to the fact that CSAs in the schools have helped to maintain safety and have been helpful. Again, it could be the fact that they really understand the roles of the CSAs and understand some of the things they do each and every day. You'll see, again, a similar response from the mental health professionals as well. Same bell-shaped curve for students, and it'll look the same for staff as well. We have a trend where, they agree that mental health professionals in schools have been helpful. And that's a really great clip right there. It's about 85% of our staff saying that mental health professionals have been really helpful. So we did ask a question about teachers and staff knowing how to handle student behaviors. And then the next question for the teachers were, do you feel as though you're prepared to handle those behaviors? Again, we see the same kind of bell-shaped curve for student response. And for teachers' response, kind of see a trend again that they kind of agree that they are equipped to handle student behaviors and disruptions. The next couple slides I thought were really important because it talks about relationships between staff members and students. And it made me have a good, warm, fuzzy feeling that our teachers are doing a great job caring for students and that those students acknowledge that care that they are receiving. So question, teachers and staff care about students. We can see that, we're moving towards the students really agreeing that staff members really care about them. And when we ask the staff respondents, do they feel equipped to build those good relationships with students? They're pretty confident that they are. And I think the results kind of match right there in the middle. Some of the questions, is there one adult in the school that I trust? And if I need help, they can help me. A lot of positives there. Great response. And the question to the staff members were the same, but it was kind of like, do you have a colleague or administrator that you can trust? And as you can see, they seem supported by themselves and the administrators as well. So I think it's very important as you build that culture of care within your buildings. Lastly, the most important question, I think, and again, DCJS asks a similar question, is do I feel safe in schools? We see kind of a trend more towards the agree, strongly agree, neutral, than we see towards the disagree. And as far as staff members, again, that same trend towards, hey, we agree that they feel safe in schools. Last few questions talks about, this is a really, I thought, funny slide here. It asks, what makes you feel safe at school? So for students, the students are in the light blue and the staff is in the darker blue. For students, they say their friends make them feel safe at school. Whereas you look at the staff members reflected that they thought the staff members made students feel more safe at school. But it just talks about what makes you feel safer at school. And those were the 5 highest categories out of all of the responses they could have chose. So again, friends for students, staff thought the staff members were more supportive. Building cleanliness was right there in the middle. And this talks about places where people feel the most unsafe. And so bathrooms, hallways, cafeterias, these are all areas where most building level individuals understand that there's a little bit more free reign, free space, students moving. And so this would probably be common across the state in most schools, that these areas are some of the areas that people really feel more unsafe. But at the end, we see that some students said they weren't sure, but they feel safe, and that really made me feel good about that as well. So again, as I wrap it up, areas of emphasis and challenges moving forward, we're going to continue to work towards improving our security systems through the rekey, the access control. Safety, again, security and de-escalation training for all staffs. I think that's important as well. The more eyes, the more people we have trained to de-escalate so that we don't get to a situation where things escalate, I think is the safest situation that we can do. So again, the more people we have that are on board to have de-escalation skills, I think the safer and safer our schools are. Again, crisis management teams, we've been working, again, to connect with different agencies to try to support our crisis management teams as well. Just had a meeting earlier this week where we connected with Fire and Rescue, Charlottesville Police Department as well, just to build in an idea of how we can come in during the summer times and have a huge workshop where we're working with the schools in general, the school-specific crisis management teams as well, so that we can develop responses that are appropriate when situations occur. Being prepared is the best way to keep individuals safe. And so we want to be able to have those conversations to make sure that we are improving those situations. One of the things that we are really working on, we identified, is improved response time. Again, one of the biggest scenarios that we have going on is without an SRO, there's not that direct contact with fire, rescue, or CPD. They can hit the radio and they had a direct line. For us, we have to go through 911. Hasn't been a lot of an issue, but again, there's that gap of time. So a lot of our conversations was to CPD and then back to us saying, hey, what do we need from you as we transmit information to you as far as a communication line? What do you need from us as well? So we're working through and having conversations around that just to improve our communications when situations occur, to hopefully improve the response time as well. A lot of times we didn't know what was going on when we called them. And so we're anxious about, hey, are you sending out a unit? And they explained to us how the backside of their process worked as well, which kind of reduced our anxiety. When they get a call, they're sending people. And we were a little anxious about answering the questions that we have to answer, to get that information out. And lastly, mental health. And I think Patrick Farrell is probably going to come back up, but I'll know that to talk more about the mental health. Any questions?
I'm sure there might be a couple, but I just want to thank you for this great presentation. I really appreciate it. And just some of those questions, above and beyond, just getting a sense from students and teachers more than or further than what the CSAs might be doing, but where they're at as far as their comfort levels. I think that was really nice to just kind of see that and to ask those questions and give people the opportunity to respond to that. So thank you. I'm gonna look at the screen in front of me where I'm looking at our board members. Ms. Dooley, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Ms. McKeever?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morse?
I do have maybe just a couple follow-up questions. For the slide that is referring to teachers, I believe, the slide just before the wrap up, are there any school-related places or times? I'm curious if we, in the survey, if some teachers may have volunteered or staff have volunteered for a follow-up. I don't want to make any assumptions as to why, bathroom and hallway transitions, but if we could get a little bit more about that and find ways, if this is an opportunity for CSAs to kind of alleviate that, or there's something else that we need to do as a school board in terms of policy. So I guess my question is, have teachers, or was there an option for staff members to insert their name for follow-up contact?
There was, I mean, we know who exactly took part of the survey, but there was not any kind of follow-up questions or follow-up information that was given to us from the teachers. So again, we're just going based off the numbers and kind of making assumptions off of, you know, why they chose the things that they chose. Using some, again, and using some kind of building background knowledge of being in the building, you know, some of the things, you know, we can kind of make a guesstimation on why people feel a certain way just from our experiences in the building as well. But it would be, you know, helpful to, you know, go back around and kind of circle back around and say, hey, we have some questions on this, and have some opportunity for people to clarify how they feel and why they feel that way.
I would appreciate that. And for me, I guess it doesn't necessarily need to come back to the board, and it feels like, unless there's a thing that the board can do to take part in solving that. But I think it would be helpful to understand if there's maybe a specific trend. But I do appreciate that. And actually, I'm going to hold off on any other questions that I might have at this time.
Thank you.
Ms. Bryce Morsberger?
Yeah, I just would like to follow up to what Mr. Morse was saying. I was curious as to those areas where people didn't feel safe, why, and if it was an internal or an external issue, and what we could do to address that. So that follow-up would be good, the way he suggested it. And then also, when we were first talking about developing the CSAs, there was some concern in the buildings about addressing student behavior and disruptions. And, you know, if there's no SRO in the building, how it gets addressed. And so I saw that most of the teachers in the survey said that they felt equipped. And so I was just wondering, is there a specific training or follow-up for those people who didn't feel that, you know, on the other end of the spectrum? Is there like is there ways to address it if you are a teacher or you don't feel like when it's something you don't feel like you can address properly?
So, I mean, I would just say there are various trainings that and opportunities that are out there. I know one of the trainings that our CSAs really use is MANT training, and the basis of MANT is de-escalation skills. So they get to understand the kind of crisis cycle, where students are, how you respond, how you're supposed to, you know, react when students are in certain crisis modes, or even, you know, as they escalate through the crisis cycle. So I think just training on that. I am a MANT trainer, so we have various other individuals, Patrick as well, Jody, who can provide those types of trainings. Again, and those are all things that we take the data that we have and kind of find out those trends that you all were talking about, working with the building level administrators to do some kind of you know, professional development around support and learning specifically, polling teachers to learn specifically what kind of strategies they do need to be better equipped in those scenarios and situations. To answer the question, I think to go back about the hallways and the cafeterias and you know, the bathrooms. I mean, having building level experience, I can kind of explain a little bit of why those scenarios are probably people feel a little bit more unsafe in those areas. Usually a bathroom or restroom are private areas. So it's not really, you know, suggested that adults are in bathrooms, especially secondary with students. So, you know, you could have someone kind of hanging around the bathrooms, you could have someone kind of float in and out, but just like a constant monitor in the bathroom would definitely make people feel unsafe. So that's one, you know, answer to that kind of question, to why students or people may feel unsafe in that area. Cafeterias, usually you're outnumbered, like as far as staff. Like, so you're gonna have staff members, and this is in any building that I've been in, right? You're gonna have a few staff members on duty, but you're probably talking 500 students, maybe 400 students to 5, 6, 7 staff members. You can increase the amount of supervision you have, and that may help. And in the hallways, it's just so much free movement, so many students. When you have 1,200 students that's moving in the building, the more people you have moving, the more incidents that may occur. You can combat that by just making sure that people are in the hallways and they're looking and they're being vigilant and they're trying to see things and disrupt things before they happen. So I mean that would be my explanation for those areas, just based off my background.
Thank you. And then the last question is, when there was SRO in the building, there's a point of contact to ask about, some things that I just remember in the planning meetings, we talked about how when there's no SRO in the building, principals and building level staff what you would get from the SRO saying that this happened over the weekend, or this is something you should look out for, or this may come in. Is there no point of contact, or is there no line of communication with the Charlottesville Police Department where they're making you all aware of things that maybe you would want to be on your radar?
Sure. So to answer that question, we are creating those lines of communication, but since that was kind of different, we have to create what that process looks like. And so for us, it's looked like a lot of different things. Like we get information in a lot of different ways, but we have to, again, streamline that process so that we are getting information from CPD to us. We're working on trying to implement, programs and procedures to make sure that it's kind of streamlined. There is a process and a protocol called Handle with Care that we've kind of been trying to implement as well. We've been talking to CPD. I went to a training on what Handle with Care looks like. It's just putting all the people right in the room to say, this is what we have to do and implement it. Part of that is on their side, part of that is on our side. And basically what Handle with Care looks like is it's a Jason Lee, I was at his residence yesterday, and you just need to handle with care, like a situation happened there. And so it just puts the school, wherever Jason Lee went to school at, on notice that something happened. They really don't share the specifics, but it's like, you need to keep an eye on them. And so that's one program that we're trying to put in place. But again, it's developing all of that. And as I said in the beginning of the presentation, it's refining it all. We're a year in to this, not even a year really, but it's kind of like the startup of a new model. So again, we're analyzing it and we're aware of some of the deficits, and there's some glows, but there are definitely some grows as well.
Thank you. That was it. I appreciate it.
Mr. Bryant.
I just had I had one question, but you've already answered it. But in your final remarks, you mentioned that the more people you have vested in the safety of our schools, eyes everywhere, our students and teachers are the better for it. So once you've conducted, when you look at the survey in its totality, are you seeing that investment?
I would say yes, as far as it being a new model. I think it went as good as it could go, being new. Again, we're one of 4 schools in the state of Virginia that was brave enough to do what we did, and I think it was a success. But I won't stand here and tell you that we don't need to grow it more, and that's just a part of the process. So I would say it has been successful. I think it will improve, and I think again all of the data that we're collecting, the people that we're putting at the table, and the conversations that we're having, it can only get better and better.
Dr. Kraft?
Yes. Thank you for this really helpful, informative presentation.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. So I just had a few things.
Sure.
Back to the question of, where students feel safe or don't feel safe. I'm wondering, would it make sense to sort of disaggregate the data from CHS and Buford so that we could get pictures of each school?
Right.
Because I don't know if they're the same or similar patterns from each school, or if they're kind of different. And that, anyway, is that possible?
Yeah,
to
I
do?
think that would be important, and I'm sure it would be possible to do because we actually did the survey for Beaufort and we did it for CHS. And of course, Beaufort sent it out, CHS sent it out. So
Yeah.
we can disaggregate the data to make it, more specific to what school answered what questions.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. During some of the reconfiguration discussions about Beaufort, this came up where there were definitely places where students didn't feel safe in school. And I, would just be interested in what that school looks like versus CHS.
I definitely think it would be
Yeah.
good to break it out.
Going back a little farther toward the beginning of the presentation, I guess there were, 77 incidents. And out of those, there were about 54 incidents where the police were called.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that that's a lot. Police were called a lot. Do you know whether this is a real increase from our past here?
I haven't looked at those numbers, but I will say this, like some of the calls were not during school time as well. So like all of the information that we gave you, it could be someone who vandalized something over the weekend, someone who broke into the schools, or someone who did some things outside of school that was not really a school issue per se with students or response from students. But again, definitely to compare that from last year, I don't know. Do you have any context? I wasn't here last year, so I don't have a context of
Yeah,
what that would
right.
look like from past years.
So here's the challenge in ever being able to provide that data. For all the things that we would make a 911 call or a non-emergency call to police for now, we never had to make those calls before because there was an SRO. And so we don't have those records. Some of those things were handled so fluidly that there's just simply no record. And now there's just actually the action to take a call. So we do have the record. So we don't have a basis of comparison. A better, at one point, and Dr. Eyes here, I noticed in the back, I mean, we were talking about earlier in the year, at one point, we felt like we were seeing less fights and things like that. Then more recently, it feels like we've made up for it. So it's just hard to say. And we're also in such a strange year with everyone coming back together again after
Right.
COVID.
Right.
So all that to say, we don't have a good answer, and that comparison would be challenging. But we are keeping the records as requested as far as the calls, and we have the different category, we're doing categories and things like that to just keep track of what's going on so we can do comparisons moving forward.
Okay. One other question about, this was the pie chart about the different types of incidents, and the one that was under medical,
Yes.
did that include mental health related, like suicide attempts? Do you know?
No, that was just medical from fire EMS, and it was staff and students as well. You want to add
And I
anything?
can add to that. Threat of harm to self would be under threat. So we are picking those types of incidences. A threat can be threat of harm to self or others.
Okay.
And by the Code of Virginia, law enforcement is to be part of the threat assessment process. So we have very good communication channels to engage our CPD partners in understanding, what the level of threat is, particularly of threat of harm to others when those situations come up. But sometimes even with the threat of harm to self, there could be information that CPD could have that could be helpful in determining the actual threat level.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm seeing that was 28.4%. So, I mean, I would be interested in knowing more about what those are, what those threats are, if that's possible. And the final thing, this is a little different, but I saw that there's an initiative from the governor regarding school safety, and it involves a lot of, grant money, but also a lot of training. And I just wondered if you had heard about this. It's through the Department of Criminal Justice.
Personally, I hadn't. Have you heard anything? I mean,
I saw an announcement like within the last couple of weeks about this. It seemed like a big initiative from the governor's office.
There are some things that have been brewing. There are actually some things earlier in the session that we thought might be coming through and then that they didn't come through. And honestly, I haven't dug in, but we're aware of those things. And we just have to see what makes sense for our school division and what's mandated versus what's
Yeah.
optional. We're just going to have to sort
Well,
through all that as.
I was a
this-
little worried that there would be some mandates that would not align with our particular program here.
That's
So-
why early in the session, we were really watching some things closely, and then we thought that had all gone its way. And then we are aware that some things have, been coming out later in the session, and I will
Yeah.
just admit that I haven't dug into those things yet, because sometimes you can invest a lot of time and energy worrying about something or thinking about something, and then it doesn't actually become a thing. So we just it's something we have to keep our eyes on, and we have to see where things land at the end of the session and what can benefit our model.
I was aware of the proposed SRO mandates, but I didn't know, and I knew that kind of fell through, so I didn't know if there was anything else that I had missed. But
I think
Yeah.
this is something that may have gone through Rob Bell's office. And anyway, I was trying to find out more information about it.
There's the thing I'm aware of that is connected with Delegate Bell is digitization, a movement to have funding to digitize school floor plans and things like that. We have that. And we also, through Deputy Fire Chief Emily Policia, has also, through her work with the crisis management team that Jason's leading, there are other resources that are available that are free, that are regional experts that can help us like refine that those databases with our floor plans and things like that. So we are aware of those types of opportunities, and Deputy Fire Chief Felicia does a really good job of keeping us aware of all the resources, and we are particularly fond of the low cost and no cost resources. That expertise is really valuable in a school division our size.
That's all I have, and thanks again, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. Just a couple more things. Just wanted to say I appreciate the fact that you're realizing we have some areas to grow and making those connections. And I think a few years ago, I think there had been some movement and initiatives to try and partner with different community members. And I know we have a strong family engagement team that I'm sure you're connected with, but I know there's a lot of potential to get support from the community as far as that communication of what's going on, and just, allowing the schools the opportunity to kind of get a heads up that, whether there's tension or other incidents going on that we might need to be aware of. So I wanted to thank you for that. And then as far as back to the survey, and I don't want to make the survey more difficult or cumbersome than it already is, but again, grateful for those who took the time to respond, but I guess not just staff, but the students who did respond that they didn't feel safe in certain areas. I think that's important, whether it's through you or whether it's through Jody and Patrick, that somebody, if there's a need, or maybe there's an anonymous way that they can provide some type of feedback, like, here's some more, here's the reason, or here's the specific incident that I didn't feel safe in. And maybe it would lead to, a need to talk or share, and we can push and make some gains in that area. So again, going
Yeah.
forward.
definitely would absolutely agree. You want 100% of the students feeling safe at school.
Yeah,
That's
and
a key
staff.
component,
Yeah.
emotional and physical safety. So.
Yeah, well, thank you both very much for this.
Thank you.
Last thing, is there anything we as a board can do to help you support this in the next year? Are there any things that you've thought of, like, this could really make a difference for us?
I just think the support so far has been great. Supporting the ideas, supporting the staffing, supporting as we continue to grow. Again, I just think you guys being on board and just the support you give us is enough at this point. Yes.
I'm going to be taking out the money. We do need to continue funding our security system improvements. Those are things that we just need to be we're not racing through those projects, but we need to keep that steady pace of addressing those things. Most of them are on the access control. Most of it is around access control, but also our camera systems. Cameras go bad, they fail, things like that. But we're working very well with Renee Huber in the finance department to just find ways to just keep a steady pace and maximizing the grants. We got the maximum state award this past year for this FY22 cycle, and every summer, we try to maximize those grant funds.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
All right, now we will have Dr. Odie, who will bring forth our SEL presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Gurley. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley, good evening again. As you know, we have had a few conversations with you about the social, emotional, mental wellness supports that we have here in our schools. We will now ask Patrick Farrell, again, our intervention and support supervisor, and also Jody Murphy, our mental wellness coordinator, to come forward and provide an update on these supports at this time. Mr. Farrell and Ms. Murphy.
Like Dr. Odie said, ma'am, good evening again. A lot of what we're doing is actually, and we actually consulted with Ms. Powell and Mr. Lee before this, because what we're doing is very much in complementary fashion to what they're doing. Both what we do for all students and staff and what we do for our students and staff who need more intensive support. And so obviously, we like to think that positive school culture and mental health are based and sounded in mental wellness. What are the things, what are those competencies that are really important that we all have? And how do we kind of create these systems in our schools? So it's not just sending people to school and saying, doing the best you can, but making sure that we're using our resources that you've been so supportive of us in bringing to the school division. How are we using them efficiently and effectively and align with the other systems that we have going? And so part of that is kind of introducing to a lot of our school communities different kinds of systems and practices and data that we hadn't typically talked about as a school, and how that kind of drives both what we do for all students and how it drives interventions as well. So going to the next slide, we have to have, we're working really hard to identify different kinds of data that are going to kind of give us a flavor about what is the impact of the student need, what is the impact of what we're doing as our efforts as a staff. And so obviously some of the data that was just shared kind of speaks this to a little bit. Some assessments that we've introduced over the last couple of years. And so it's important, especially for this, because we're in new ground, to kind of get at data kind of in a triangulation fashion. You want to make sure we hear student voice. So with our social emotional learning curriculum that is available K-12, Rethink Ed, SEL, there's a student self-assessment in there where students themselves in grades 3 through 12 have the opportunity to say, here's how it's a strength-based assessment. And I think I've spoken to the assessment to you before. It's a strength-based assessment that says, here's what I think I do well. And it's like a light scale. I do this kind of not so well, I do it very well. And we look to kind of get data from that. We have another assessment used called the DESA, which is it's a screening tool that we use at elementary, and CHS actually piloted for the first time this year. And that actually the teachers that know the students well, what's their perception of their students' strengths, and where are some areas that they could potentially grow. And then we have threat assessment data that kind of speaking to a little bit, you used to saying, Dr. Kraft, about what are some of those different kinds of threats. Jody's been able to speak to that a little bit as well. And then we also have our qualitative data. So how are we are not in the business of diagnosing mental illnesses in the school setting, but we do want to make sure that we're assessing what student needs are and then making sure we have interventions lined up to meet them. So a lot of that has been based on kind of getting input from teachers, getting input from parents, getting input from community members, our community partners, clinical case discussions, the fact that we have Jody serving the role that she's serving as a mental wellness coordinator, as a mental health professional, she for the first time we have an internal capacity to offer clinical support to all our school mental health professionals, which we've never had before, which is incredible. And I think a lot of the schools have recognized the fact that we've really, again, with the support of these new positions, increase our capacity both for our staff and then their staff's ability to, in turn, then increase their capacity to serve more of our students. And then also, as our administrators kind of have historically kind of done this, usually they've kind of handled each thing kind of separately. So how can we offer administrative support to, how do we kind of approach this in a systematic, constructive way? So if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so just give you an example of some of those, what some of this data looks like. So this is an example from Greenbrier Elementary School. So they offered their 3rd and 4th grade students the Rethink Ed, the student self-assessment. And so basically it's based on the CASTLE model, which talks about self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, problem-solving skills, and responsible decision-making. And where do the students perceive that they are functioning there. And actually, we kind of showed you about both the fall administration and the spring administration. And we've seen that we're kind of moving that needle incrementally right now. Again, it's been a challenging year, especially at the elementary level. They're just starting to do our social emotional learning instruction. They're just starting to kind of name those things that they might be seeing or feeling. And what does it mean to manage myself? And what does it mean to do things like that? Thanks, Matt. Is that better? I think yeah, so I'm sorry about that. And so that'd be an example of this is the kind of data that we have both available at the individual level, but it's also available to kind of just give us a big picture about how is our school functioning. And so ideally we'd see kind of a bell curve there. And of course, ideally at the end, we kind of see like everyone feels very confident in their social emotional competencies. And that's obviously what we're going for. But even with this is the second year I've done that, this data is actually an improvement over last year's data. And so I think we're getting more comfortable with our systems. We're getting more comfortable with our social emotional learning instruction. And so we are seeing some progress in the right direction there. The next slide. One back, please. Thank you. And so this is the information that we get from the DESA Mini. The DESA Mini is just it's a screening. It's an 8-question screening that basically kind of asks teachers. They ask like for your class, for one particular class you have for the elementaries, it's their homeroom. I think at the high school they decide who do you have in third period, and just kind of after you get to know them for 4 to 6 weeks, where do you see kind of like what's their ability to make friends? How do they kind of negotiate a difficult situation? And it's a norm reference test. And then basically kind of sorts the students into 3 areas, either kind of needs instruction, typical or strengths. And of course, this is a strength-based assessment. The assumption is like, oh, we're not making any mental health diagnosis here. This is that if the student is not performing where they need to be, we need to kind of instruct them and build their skills and build their confidence up. And so we would kind of expect this kind of information here, where typically speaking, about 25% of the students might be struggling a little bit. There's a big middle. And then at the top, where we have many students that come into our schools, and this social emotional competencies are a strength of theirs. And so what we do find the progression for the DESA, the elementary, we actually do it 3 times a year. And there's a really nice progression from green to red to blue, where the red gets smaller as the year goes on, and the green gets bigger as the year goes on. So the next kind of data we're going to talk about is the threat assessment data. And that's Jody's going to come speak to that.
Sorry. Good evening, Dr. Gurley, Madam Chair, school board members. Please excuse me if I start to cough, but I'm going to do my very best tonight. So I'm going to talk to you about threat assessment data. And the school mental health professionals and our administrators do both threat to self and threat to others. That is when a student threat to self is talking about hurting themselves or killing themselves, and threat to others is when we have a student or a community member who is in our school staff who makes a threat towards somebody else. This year, we have a new process in place, and that gives us the ability to both be more in line with the state and also be able to collect data. It's really important when we're looking at threat assessments that regardless of what school you are in our division, that we are doing the same thing. So if you are at Burnley Moran or your child attends Johnson, we should be doing the same thing. It shouldn't be that one thing happens at one of our schools and something else happens at a different school. And so we started this process where we're following best practice. That means when a threat to self comes to our attention, we have 2 school mental health professionals conduct that threat to self. It's important both for our school mental health professionals because it is a very difficult and heavy decision when you are doing threat to self assessments or threat to others really. But at the end of that assessment, you're really making a decision about the level to threat and whether you believe that student needs to go on for further assessment, whether that's to the local community services board, which given how heavy their load is right now, it's really that we are sending students to the hospital. And that is a pretty traumatic experience. The wait is very long. We have had students at the hospital for not just hours, but for days. So it is a big decision that we are having to make. You can see by the data that I have up, we are doing more than 1 assessment on average every day, whether that's a threat to self or threat to others. Um, Right now, we have most of our school mental health professionals have attended what's called the ASSIST training. I think Mr. Lee talked about that a little bit, that our CSAs have attended that training. It's the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. It just enhances our comfort level with talking to people about suicide, being direct about it. I tell our school mental health professionals the day I feel comfortable doing assessments is the day I probably want to stop. It is very hard to do these assessments, but we all need to be competent and confident. And we have worked very hard this year in getting our school mental health professionals to feel competent in doing threat assessments. Most of our school mental health professionals also attended the state threat assessment training, which focuses mostly on threat to others, and a number of our administrators attended that training as well. So we have worked very hard this year to get to a baseline for threat assessments. I will say baseline, this data feels pretty high for the number of threat assessments we've done, but it's our first year of collecting data in a consistent way. I don't have good data to show you before this year. I will also say nationally, the number of suicides is very, it has risen for especially adolescents. You can look every day. There's an article in the news about adolescent thoughts of suicide attempts. So I'm hoping that next year I will have continued data and we can see where the trajectory is headed. As far as qualitative data goes, I want to talk about all of the things, which is not a good word, that our school mental health professionals are doing that are very difficult to capture. We looked lots of different ways to try and collect hard data about this, and it is very difficult. But I wanted to talk about how integral our school mental health professionals are to their school community. Things like crisis work, clinical consultation that they're providing, home visits. We try to collect that information. I have some data. I will say the number of times somebody's going out to a home visit and then forgets to log it is probably more than the times that they do log it, because they will be on one home visit and then they stop at 3 different homes along the way. They're working on creating safe and connected communities and relationships, both with kids and other staff. They provide education and professional learning regarding mental and behavioral health, both for students, staff, family members, and community members that they're working with. They help to create and brainstorm plans for students that they are not directly working with, so helping other people to come up with ideas about what might help other kids or students. They're running groups like life skills engagement groups, particularly Afghan support groups. There's one at both Buford and CHS. We've had a huge influx of Afghan students into our school this year. There's an empowerment group that was run, a stress management group, a friendship group, a skills group. I could go on and on about the groups that were run this year. They're providing general tier 1 support. Not as much as we would like, because our tier 3 intervention is taking up a huge amount of time right now. We're doing things like restorative circles, behavioral and emotional support, helping setting up systems in classrooms so kids are not requiring that high tier 3 intervention. Working on zones of regulation and getting that set up for both with teachers and students. And like I said, because of the high need in tier 1, we're not as available all the time to help with tier 1 support. We interact with students all the time, whether it's at the bus loop, drop off, lunch. And then we work with, when I'm talking about frequency, duration, and intensity, the school mental health professionals are working with a small number of students, but intensely. And so on any given day, they may see 5 students, but it could be for a long period of time, or they might do a threat assessment that takes 3 hours. And so no day looks exactly the same for our school mental health professionals.
So then we were very fortunate enough to be able to hire and have obviously someone like Jody, but to hire some great people at our schools. But then how do we make sure that this is sustainable? How do we make sure that it's not just dependent on who walks through the door, but every student and every family has access to these services? So we really had to build an infrastructure. And so what we had the ability now with, there's at least 2 school mental health professionals at every building. And at the elementary level, this has been a huge development. For a long time, our school counselors, as Mr. Brown, I'm sure can attest to, they were singletons at the elementary school. They were kind of an island by themselves. And then we had some itinerant people offering kind of, intermittent support. But now that there's actually a team there that's being built at each, and it's kind of included in our Virginia tier system of supports, so that it's integrated and aligned with our academic interventions, with our positive school culture, but positive behavior support interventions. And so there's a school level mental wellness team. There's division level teaming that we do when we do professional learning. And sometimes they bring all the folks together so they can hear about different schools, other experiences. And again, what are you trying over here that seems to be working real well? Well, it's something that we really struggle with. And so setting up those structures to facilitate that conversation. The fact that, again, that we have someone in-house who before we relied very heavily on our community partners. And again, sometimes, again, with Region 10 is in our secondary schools, but with different changes in funding at the state level, therapeutic day treatment has been as available to us at the schools. So now that we have our own internal capacity to meet this, I think our teachers and our administrators feel much more supported. And the fact that because we want to make sure that we have a system of ensuring that we know each of our interventionists are going to have real amazing strengths, but we want to make sure that the floor is high for every one of our interventionists. Like some might spike in areas, but they're all going to have a good solid set of skills. So what Jody and I have identified is a 3-year cycle of about 8 different trainings that all of our, like these are skills and competencies and mindsets that all of our mental health professionals should have. And so over a 3-year cycle, right now, through their own personal choice and maybe a particular need at their school, they might decide to do something this year, do a different training next year. Like assist was a big point of emphasis this year. And so it's that idea of making sure that there's cyclical, repeatable trainings that sort of everybody keeps the skill at a high level, whether we're onboarding new folks or refreshing skills of our more experienced people. And so we see some examples there of some of that professional learning that I'll let you read there as well. And again, that's just kind of part of our cycle. Next slide, please. And then Jody touched on this, so I won't spend too much time on this, is because they do kind of exist in our Virginia tier system of support, they spend most of their time at tier 3. And that's so incredibly important because I think when we first came in the fall, one of the principals kind of actually said this, we've never really had a dedicated person to provide this level of support. We had outside agencies that would come in and if the kid was Medicaid eligible, and we had all these kind of ifs. Now we have the capacity at all schools to meet the most intensive needs of the students who are really struggling with their mental health. And so whether they're, again, we're talking about our school counselors, our clinical social workers, our social emotional support counselors. All of them are kind of, again, working together as a team to help kind of triage this. They also, our school mental health professionals are available at tier 2, with Jody touched on some of the groups that they're running, that again, are not only addressing needs that are starting to kind of bubble up, but are acting in a preventive fashion where if the work we can do at tier 2 means some of these kids never get to tier 3. And when we were struggling before, especially in the first year of the pandemic, many of our kids, we didn't have tier 2 supports. And so kids who normally get their needs met were turning into crisis. And so the more we be that preventative model, we know we're that much the better. Next slide, please. And then the last part is, again, being very intentional with our community partnerships. That while it's great that we've increased our internal capacity and it's really, really necessary, it's also, we'd be foolish to not to acknowledge all the great partners we do have in the community. So I do want to mention that again at Region 10, that while they don't provide therapeutic day treatment anymore, they are in our high school in Beaufort through the Student Assistance Program, and they do provide outpatient counseling at the high school. We do have Elk Hill National Counseling Group, 2 community-based mental health agencies that do provide therapeutic day treatment at a much lower level than it had in the past, but also offer outpatient counseling. We were very fortunate enough to be in a partnership with the University, the Virginia Department of Education and University of Virginia for the Partnership for School Mental Health, which is a grant program that actually has dedicated PL, kind of going back to for some school divisions, including Charlottesville, what are some dedicated professional learning opportunities, and also a chance to come together with people, other professionals from different divisions, and do case consultation, and just do case studies and do that kind of case review model, really effective best practicing, modeling the best practices for our school mental health professionals. At Johnson and at Greenbrier, we have the Compassionate School Project, which blends social emotional learning, mindfulness, nutrition, physical education. And Wild Rock has been an amazing partner for a long time. I'm sure all you are aware of them with the nature-based play and using nature to help kind of co-regulate yourself. Keeping these partnerships fresh. And again, in some of these partnerships are helped with some of the Title IV funding that I was referring to before. It's really a great complementary piece to the increased kind of a capacity that we've developed over the past year or so. And next slide. And then we do want to share one more great service that we've just started, but Joy's will give you more information on it.
So we are really excited. We just started a partnership with Care Solace. We implemented it on April 1st, and it is a non-clinical service that allows us to make referrals for both students and families. But also super exciting to us is that we can also use it for staff and staff's families. And this service will, it's very easy to explain if I can use my brain. So the service will then hook up families, students, whomever uses it to clinical services or whatever mental health service or behavioral health service that you're looking for in the community. And so what it does allow is for help for the person who is looking for a service to do a lot of the phone calls and find a clinician or mental health service or behavioral health service in our community. And so for our school mental health professionals who have all been trained, what they're called as care companions, we can do what's called a warm handoff. So if Jody Murphy was looking for a mental health clinician because I was experiencing depression, a school mental health professional can make that referral to Care Solace, and then a care companion would help my family find me a mental health professional in our community. While they can't make waiting lists go away, and we know that there are long waiting lists in our community like every other community across this country, what they have the ability to do that we don't always have the ability to do within our school division, our school mental health professionals, I can't always call somebody back. That's not my full-time job. I would like for it to be, I would like to say, yes, I can call you back at 12 o'clock. I might not even get that message that says that clinician's available at 12 o'clock, but Care Solace has dedicated care companions where that's their full-time job. And so our school mental health professionals have all been trained about how to use it. The platform is very user-friendly. I printed out actually because I can see, I don't see who has been referred, but I can see that since we have been trained, which was right before we went out on spring break, we have already referred 20 students, which given that we've been using it for less than a month is pretty impressive, I think. And I've already gotten positive feedback from our school mental health professionals that they feel relieved, that they know that, okay, this kid, this student, this family member who has said, I need help, is being cared for. And also we will be working with HR to launch the website. So it can also allow for anonymous searches. Would you to see? So they match people, they make sure that an appointment has been made, and then they follow up with whoever that client is. So whether it's a staff member or a staff member is searching for their child. The next one. One more. Okay, and then they follow up to ensure that satisfaction has happened. There's also an ability to do anonymous searches. So if I don't want you to know that I am looking for help, there'll be a website that we can, or a link that we can put on our Charlottesville City Schools website. So I don't have to tell you that I'm looking for a therapist or that I'm looking for an assessment or that I'm looking for substance abuse help. And Care Solace will send me a list of people locally or through telehealth. They'll look for people who use my insurance, or I can say that I don't have insurance, and they will look for people who either take reduced rates, all of those things. There's also an option within that where I can put in that I'd like to speak to somebody. They also speak many different languages through translating services. So it has a lot of good options for us and we're excited about it. That is it, unless you have questions for us.
Thank you both. Jody, I hope you're okay. I will again turn to our on-screen board members to see if you have any questions. Ms. McKeever, or comments? No? Mr. Morris?
No questions or comments.
Thank you. Ms. Dooley?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think, some of these numbers are just really staggering. The number of students in our care that are having mental health crises. And so I'm really appreciative of the work. I also just I guess it's more of a comment to draw attention, just as we, again, next year, Dr. Gurley has mentioned this several times, try to bring the thermometer down. The funding that we have provided for these positions is part of that equation. And I think it's just really important that we work together to make sure that we don't pull the rug out from underneath our students and the staff that have really grown to rely tremendously on this service. I mean, our schools are providing so much more in educating the whole child. It's just not all about education. And we know that teaching and learning can't happen when students are in crisis. And so I'm just so appreciative of the work and really think as a community, we really have to commit to this being ongoing.
Thank you. I agree. Dr. Kraft?
Well, I just feel really good about what you guys are doing with the work that's going on. I think we've really stepped up in this area for, students and I think now for staff. I think you're doing terrific, wonderful work, really important work, and we have to maintain it. We just have to keep it. It's just an integral part of our school division now, and just so important for student success. So just want to say that, and I just had a couple of little questions. One is with the Compassionate School Project. It's at 2 schools. I've heard really good things about it, and I'm wondering what are the prospects for expanding it?
And so right now, we're lucky enough that that the Compassionate School Project is actually at no cost for our division. It was funded through UBA grants. And so they are looking for them, they're trying to produce a reproducible model for themselves. Like, this is what a Compassionate School Project look like at any elementary school. And so they're looking for grant opportunities to do that expansion. And the other piece too is that there's just been one school where we've gone K4. That was Johnson last year. This year, Greenbrier has been doing it for K1. And so in some respects, we're still working on the scaling up for the K4, so kind of perfecting the model. But I think once Greenbrier gets there, I think we're definitely looking for opportunities to expand it because, like I said, we've had nothing but really good feedback on the program.
Great. And one other little question. In one of the slides, it said the schools are experiencing an inverted triangle. And could you help me understand what that means?
Sure. So the inverted triangle is, when we talk about the tiers, we generally would like for tier 1 to be at the bottom, the base be 80%, tier 2 be about 15%, tier 3 be around 5%. In mental wellness, we are experiencing that not 80% in tier 3, but we are experiencing that tier 3 is much heavier than 5%. And so we talk about that as an inverted triangle, that we need to get tier 1 to be stronger and be serving 80% in tier 1 for mental wellness, just like we want that to be 80% for reading or language arts, 80% for math. And right now we're experiencing more of an inverted triangle. And a lot of that is not, that's not special for Charlottesville. That is the experience, again, across the nation. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Yes. And finally, are there any gaps that you want to tell us about that you think that areas where we might be able to help?
I think right now, kind of similar to what Mr. Lee said before, it's the first year we've had this whole team in place. We're setting up our systems. And so, like, again, we think we've done some really good work. We know we can do better. And so it probably, as we get into year two, and also, what does it look like in a quote unquote normal school year? That's something we kind of have to discover as well. And so I think there's been probably a lot more crisis stabilization this year than hopefully we would have going forward, and more on the preventative end. And so I think once we get a sense of that, then we might kind of be able to have a truer picture about where do we might need additional resources, whether they be materials, staff, or whatever. But it might be a little too premature to say that right now.
Mr. Bryant.
Losing my voice as well. Jody and Patrick, this is just wonderful news. When I think back, now that our school counselors and community partners and families can join in the chorus in ensuring that our students who are dealing with challenges and trauma in our schools, that they have access to this service right in the schools. So this makes me feel real good as a former counselor. And I think high school counselors and middle school counselors and elementary counselors are all the better for it, because they have that support, and you all are working in concert with each other to ensure that our kids are able to move forward despite challenges and to be successful in school. So I thank you all for leading the charge in this. This is great news, and hopefully we will definitely try to continue, this model. Definitely. Thank you all so much for this great work.
Lashonda.
No comments.
Thank you. Me neither, then, other than just thank you both very much. Appreciate you. Please let us know if there's anything else we can do to support.
All right, next we have Dr. Odie with our professional learning update.
Right, one more time, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Gurley, I would like now to bring forward Ms. Paula Culver Dickinson, our coordinator of professional learning, who will present a professional learning update. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Paula's done so much work over the many years here in Charlottesville City Schools, and this will be her last presentation to the board, as although she will be doing lots of work over the next 2 months, she will be retiring at the end of June. So we thank her for her service. Ms. Culver Dickinson.
Thank you, Dr. Odie. Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Gurley, members of the board, and others in attendance here. I really do want to thank you all for the opportunity to provide you with an update on professional learning for here in Charlottesville. I also would be remiss if I did not thank the board for your continued and significant investment in the professional development of all of our faculty, administrators, and staff over the years. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Next slide, please. Finally, I also have to thank you for recognizing the one simple truth, that when it comes to student achievement, the impact of teachers is undeniable. Indeed, over 50 years of educational research consistently demonstrates that teachers matters more to student achievement than any other in-school factor. It's estimated that the average teacher will impact outcomes for over 400 students over the course of their career. Furthermore, additional studies have shown that the impact of those highly effective teachers, those master teachers, the top of our profession, their impact extends far beyond the classrooms. It are associated with increased likelihood of attending college and higher salaries over their lifetime. But there's a second simple truth that we have to talk about. There are very few natural born mastery level teachers. Teaching is complex and only getting more complex by the day. Mastery takes time. Mastery takes practice. Mastery takes support. Mastery takes dedication. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm here to talk about professional development. So in a nutshell, what is professional learning? In short, it's how we get from here to there. I'm going to move this up a little bit. I think that's better. Next slide, please. So where exactly are we today? That's a hard one to talk about because there's so many different metrics we could be using. So I'm going to take you through just a few that are at the top of my mind. Next slide. Where we are today is we're at a point of change. No one can deny that the past few years have been a period of great change, challenge, and opportunity for K-12 education and society at large, and that the speed of change only seems to be accelerating. Right now, we have access to more technology, better technologies, different technologies than we ever have had in the history of the world. Like most schools across the country, we know that we are still feeling the impacts of COVID. While we know more about COVID and how we can keep ourselves and each other safe, the ripple from it is still undeniable when it comes to unfinished learning. And so we have kids that are a little presenting differently than we have seen them in the past. And to be honest, we also have staff that are feeling COVID, experiencing it very differently and presenting differently than they have in the past. Next slide, please. We are also at a point in history where we have more evidence about what works best for student learning and student outcomes than at any other time in history. But here's the trick. Translating what we know into what we do takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes support. Next slide. One of the things we now know, thanks to the work of Dr. Linda Darling Hammond, is that we need to have certain conditions present in order for effective professional learning to occur. Those 7 conditions are up there on the board. It is content focused. We need to be providing teachers with the content that is relevant to themselves and to their practices. Incorporates active learning. Professional learning is not just an academic pursuit. Teachers have to take it and apply it in the classroom. There is learning by doing. It supports collaboration. Learning is always social. It includes models and modeling. We need to have clarity on what done looks like. What are we striving for? What is possible? We also need that providing coaching and expert support is really an important component of professional development. Feedback, reflection, all of that has to be in there. And most importantly, it has to be of sustained duration. Once and done doesn't cut it. Next page, please. From the work of Joelle and Killian, we also know that trying to figure out if the professional learning is effective is tricky. It's really tricky because too often we are focused to look at just our inputs. We gave professional learning and our outputs. Student achievement changed. But what happened? Teachers attended the professional learning, but did they actually implement it in the classroom? And if they implement it in the classroom, did they implement it well? Or did they implement it at a lower level? Or did they try it once and abandon it? So what Dr. Killian talks about is that we really need to develop a glass box evaluation process. We look at where they attend, but then we have to go in and go through classroom visits. Are we seeing this in the classroom? Let's do some progress checks, coaching, the training, all the PD events, but having teachers look inside the impact and the actual application of the new learnings into their classroom so that we can better understand that they attended, they tried it, They did it again, they got better, and then outcomes changed. Now we have a better idea of the impact. Next slide, please. We also know, and as we just heard from Jody and Patrick, today's students have needs that are more complex than just providing academic context. So teachers need to learn new techniques. They need to apply them, and they need to get good at them in their classroom. Yeah, let's go on to the next. So in 2021, we adopted a professional learning framework that really put students at the absolute center of everything that we do from PL. And it recognized that if we really want to create those life-ready learners, if we want to be successful, we have to be able to engage our children cognitively, behaviorally, and emotionally. And those are not three separate entities, but they do interplay. And in order to do that, teachers need to be able to look at their classroom, identify what is going on, identify what their needs are, develop a plan, implement it, and then check the response that they get, make the adoption and go through it again. And lastly, context is around the outside. Here again, if we ever learn the importance of context, COVID really brought it to the forefront. Next slide, please. So where are we today? The good news is that we have all 7 of those structures and resources and conditions necessary for effective professional learning. And we have one other thing that's up there. We have a really highly talented, really hardworking, very dedicated staff and teachers. So looking at those structures, the embedded contract time, you all have made it very abundantly clear. PL is not an add-on. It is actually part of our job and built into our contracts. Principals worked really hard to reimagine and reconfigure master schedules so that PLCs could be supported and have time to work together throughout the entire year. That is one of our most important structures because that's what makes the ongoing nature of professional learning possible. Personalized support that is available to every teacher includes instructional coaches, as well as math specialists, reading specialists, gifted specialists, ESL specialists, and that was my great sin of omission, our mental health support specialists that are in there as well. Coordinators and supervisors and building administrators all have stepped up and are filling in the gaps of any PL needs that they see. We also have those multiple delivery models. I'll tell you, over the past year and a half, 2 years, we have really learned how to master in-person, virtual, synchronous, asynchronous, just in time, right in time learning and make those options all work. We also have the additional resources that for new teacher and beginning teachers. Our 3-day new teacher orientation is really instrumental in starting them on their journey. And for our beginning teachers, our teachers who are just starting out in the profession, they are assigned an in-school mentor to work with them throughout the year as an additional layer of support. Lastly, we are very blessed in the Charlottesville community to have the community partners that we have. They are here and they have been utilized and very important in all of our initiatives. Next one, please. So here we are in May, and we're finishing up this year, and we're awaiting those final student achievements results. We have been monitoring how we're doing throughout the year, and we're feeling quite hopeful that the professional learning that we have provided is making a difference. So fingers crossed. But we are also, and the trick about professional learning in this job is that you have to be thinking 6 months out. So right now we are actively planning Leadership Advance, which is where we will pull all of our administrators together. Thank you, Dr. Gurley. I really am enjoying those parts. So we're actively planning that. And we've also got curriculum teams that are coming in. They're reviewing the pacing guides. They will get ready. They're putting in together cross-curricular activities. And here again, they will be adjusting any of the pacing guides that as they need to be adjusted based on the student achievement results that we get. And I'm so happy to say we are finally starting to be able to send teams to national conferences. We have got quite a large team that will be attending the AVID conference this summer. And those, when you go on those team experiences and have that team professional learning, it's magical what can happen and the synergy that comes back and the energy that can come back into the building. So we're very excited about those. We're also planning for next year. We've got a division-wide professional learning planning committee that is together, also getting feedback from almost every stakeholder we can possibly imagine. New teacher orientation, we're looking at that to see if we can create a pathway that makes the onboarding even a little bit easier or smoother for some of our new hires. And then I'm kind of right in the throes of putting together the August Professional Learning Conference opportunities, which I'm thrilled about those. I think that's going to be a really great opportunity. Next slide. So where to next? Next slide. We're going to constantly continue to evaluate our impact, and we're going to build on what's working, and we're going to stop what's not. Because you can't just keep adding to the plate without taking anything off of it. So we need to continue to provide those professional learning opportunities that are aligned with our CCS strategic plan and the goals of this division. We continue to provide PL design to support both the academic and the wellness needs of our students and our staff. We're going to continue to leverage all the internal and external resources that we can and maintain our preparedness to shift to virtual should that be needed in the future. And finally, we really want to continue to turn our data into knowledge. We often talked about data, but what we are really talking about is students. So we want to make sure that we are always keeping that at the forefront. And next slide. Yeah. I'm happy to announce that we have 2 new PL pathways on the horizon. The first is focused on supporting our instructional assistants who may be hoping to become teachers. The second is teacher focused and is designed to address unfinished learning in reading and math via the development of those mastery level teachers. So please, oops, yeah. Oh, nope, go back, sorry. So for our instructional assistants, we are collaborating with JMU and PVCC to allow our teachers to participate in a pathway that is designed specifically for working instructional assistants to move through from an associate's degree at PVCC to complete the last 2 years at JMU, a direct admission to JMU, to end up, after they take the exams, they would be qualified for either elementary ed or special education endorsement. In that, they have offered a very reduced tuition rate that is favorable, and they are sequencing that course progression out one at a time. So typically, if you were a full-time student, you would take 5 classes. This, you take 1 at a time. So 7 weeks, next 7 weeks, the next one, next 7 weeks. That's an exciting opportunity for any IAs who are interested in pursuing that. And then we will also continue to send individual teams to various different conferences to build our baseline level. Then we'll go to the next slide. All right, so to the next slide, please. Yeah, we were just awarded, eye-popping $785,414, not to be confused with 415, in ESSER 3 funds. It was designed to address unfinished learning, and it was awarded specifically for stipends for teachers for out of contract time. So how could that work? It's designed to complement it. We've got the money has to be expended between now and September 2024. What we are calling currently, it's a working title, is Empowered PL. because this is calling for teachers and asking who wants to learn more, who wants to go deeper, who wants to be a mastery teacher. We want to make sure we're building that teacher agency and that we are really honoring the fact that not everybody wants to do this. So this is completely opt-in. We anticipate that they will be probably dedicating about 1 hour per week beyond their contract time in studying an area of their desire within realms. Does that make sense? Probably not. What we want to look at is make sure that we are giving some different options. Teachers could elect to go into a specific area or strand to go deeper on. We can put together some cohorts, but that is still under construction. So I don't want to get a little bit ahead of my skis, as I will not be around to implement that. But the rough patches are, and I want to make sure that I'm reinforcing, it's completely opt-in. It is designed to promote teacher agency and mastery. It will go ahead, provide a stipend to cover their out of contract time, and that it will work out over the course of years. We hope that if they go through this year, then they will become a cohort that can work with other cohorts over the summer. While the lion's share of the grant went to teacher stipend, we did also write in there some that would go to bringing in outside experts to work with those specific cohorts. Uh-oh, I know I'm going to get questions about this. Next slide. All right, so we're excited to say that we know that we have already had multiple learning pathways, professional learning pathways, but we're extending them. And we are going to make sure that those opportunities are continued to expand and that they can personalize their own learning pathway. We all know the context of the importance of context, and COVID may not be done with us, but we are agile and we are resilient. We know how to deliver PL face-to-face, virtually, synchronously, asynchronously. We know how to deliver PL that meets all the 7 essential elements of effective PL. We know how to assess the impact of our learning and the state of implementations of new learnings in the classroom. We have resources dedicated to provide targeted, timely feedback and supports, and we now have entirely new pathways for teachers who are ready to dive deep and share their stories with others so others can learn from them. We know that change is hard. We know that teaching is complex, and we know that together we can accomplish great things. And we know that our students deserve it. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Board members, any comments, questions? LaShondra, I'll start with you.
I don't have any comments or questions, but thank you for your service and congratulations on your
Thank you.
retirement.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you for your service, Paula, and enjoy your retirement.
I hear it's good.
Yes.
I hear it's good gig.
Dr. Kraft?
Well, some people in their retirement join the school board, so there's always that. But it's fun retirement activity, really. But yeah, this is amazing, and you will really be missed.
Well, thank you.
So if you get bored, please come back to us. But thank you for everything you've done
Thank you.
over all of these years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dooley?
No, just echoing congratulations. I had the privilege of teaching Paula's daughter back in the day, so this is a fun full circle moment, but thanks for all that you're doing. And I really appreciate the newest implementation of PL that really is teacher driven. I think that's a really great opportunity.
Mr. Morse?
And I'll just kind of throw my support around the JMU PVCC partnership. I know for me, that would have changed my career trajectory very early on. And I hope that helps us retain our IAs until they're certified to become teachers for our division.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Ms. McKeever?
I just want to say I've been working with Miss Culver Dickinson for a long time, so thank you so much, and we'll miss you. You're so professional, and You've done a lot of good work around, well, a lot of good work in our division period, because you've had many hats. I do want to eventually come back to this grant, but I don't think this is of time, but that is a huge amount of money. And I just want maybe Dr. Baptist to note for a future board meeting that we should look back at that, which I'm sure we will. But I just wanted to say thank you to Miss Paula Dickerson.
Thank you.
Culver Dickinson.
One more time. No. All right. I also want to echo my gratitude to you and for everything that you've done for the division, and thank you for this. And yeah, I'll echo a couple of other things, exciting, program and pathway for the JMU and the IAs, and look forward to it. So thank you again for everything.
Thank you. And once again, really, thank you for the support of the professional learning of the teachers in this division. Thank you.
All right, and next is me. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. So I stand before you this evening, and so I had some things written, but I feel strongly that words matter. And so as I listened to our teachers earlier, one thing that I hope that our teachers know and see regularly is that they matter, and that since I've been here, I can't speak of any time before this time, but since I've been here, I want to show them how much they matter. But I did hear some things this afternoon and this evening, and so I just want to make sure that before I make my statements that I debunk anything, because I think that sometimes there are things that become undercurrents, and those things can work against the greater good. And so the first thing that I want to say is that I have no intention to ask the board to write my own resolution. That is not the request that I will be making this evening. And that another one of the things that I heard was someone say about being full partners. And what I hope that they hear is that the only intent moving forward is for us to be partners in order to achieve one goal. And then I also heard something that was related to developing a common vision. And I believe that this process is about honoring teachers, and in honoring teachers, that will translate to the continued results for our students. And so I want to thank Ms. Taylor and Ms. Saxton, because on yesterday, I got to have a very brief meeting with them. But what I hope they heard me say was that we will continue to be transparent moving forward. I believe we have been transparent, but I think that people also need to understand what the work is that lies ahead of us. What lies ahead of us is a road that this school board has never gone down. And in order for us to go down this road, we will have to do that together if we're going to do it successfully. As I shared with them on yesterday, that I work at the pleasure of the school board, and that there are 7 board members who, while they all work collectively for one good here, that they do have outside careers and lives, and there are things that prevent 7 board members from being in one room together. And so that is why on this afternoon that I'm asking that I am able to work on behalf of the board, not me work and develop my own resolution. That what I am asking is for you all to, I will gather input from the board. I will find out what it is that the board needs moving forward from this process. One of the proposals on yesterday was that the CEA attorney, along with myself and our school board's attorney, just sit down to make sure that as we move forward, this process is never intended to slow anything. And so if we work on the front end together, that this process should not be slowed. And I know that that is also the pleasure of the school board. So what I am asking is that you grant me authorization to work on your behalf to craft a collective bargaining resolution. And we know that CEA has developed a resolution, and I think that that's part of what we are hearing, that the CEA has proposed a resolution, and that is not to say that what will be presented will be drastically different from what they proposed, but we will come together and they will see what it is that they have presented and what you all would like to see back. And your authorization will allow me to continue to work with all stakeholder groups, and included in those stakeholder groups is the CEA. And so all of those things, and CEA will have access to all of those things long before we stand before a school board meeting with any type of resolution. And so if you have any questions, I will take questions, but this is something that will require action this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Gurley. We'll start again on screen. Ms. McKeever?
Dr. Gurley, my question, is more of a comment. One of the things that I found, and you are very new to this division, and I, trust you implicitly with our, the work of the division. So thank you for all of the work that you've done for us. And I know it's not been a challenge. It's not been an easy year, and you've risen to all the challenges. And we just talked recently about how, the way we used to do things. So I don't mean to, but one of the things that I found in working and being accountable and transparent in a division is making sure that all of us are at the table. And that really does include a school board member. I found the more you include a school board member in addition to CEA and other community stakeholders, the more transparent and accountable and the more buy-in you're going to get from this body. I saw many times before the COVID pandemic, just keeping us out of the decision-making process, out of the kind of sausage making of it, really allowed some distrust to develop. And so that and I don't want that for you. And this is such a big project. And I'm very proud of us as a city in our division to move forward in this project. So I wonder how, and I always made the argument, but during the COVID pandemic, we were able to get school board members, teachers, central office staff, community members together and work on a plan that we all had buy-in in. And I cannot tell you how important it was for the very difficult decisions that we had to make. And I just think it's very important that we take that same level of transparency to this process. So I do have some concerns about that. I think that there's a majority of the board who will want to authorize you to work on our behalf, but I do encourage you to consider why you're doing that and why not have one of us, it doesn't have to be me, believe me, but it really does allow a lot more buy-in from the board if we also have a seat at the table. So I encourage you to think about that. Thank you.
And Ms. McKeever, this is not excluding any board member from participating. This is solely for the purposes that in most instances, unless unless the 7 board members can devote to, posting a meeting and meeting 2 to 3 days a week for the next ample weeks. This is me being able to work. And so having two board members can be at the table every time we have a meeting. So this is just saying that we can move forward with assisting CEA, assisting our school board attorney, assisting the attorney, that someone is authorized to work on your behalf, bring information back to you, and most certainly, it's just not to slow this process.
Thank you.
I
Dooley.
I would then direct my next comment to Lisa and suggest that we have 1 or 2 board members also be working who can devote this time, who can then report back to this board their own views, because I do think having multiple opinions coming at us is important. And it'll bring the group to consensus a lot quicker.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate that. And I wrote that down and this is exactly, what we wanted at this point, was to hear from different board members as to how you think we can do this moving forward. So, Mr. Morse.
No further questions or comments.
Okay, Ms. Dooley. Dr. Kraft.
Yeah, I guess what I would say at this point, I also listened closely to the comments earlier. And just want to state for myself, the way I understand this is that we're sort of giving a green light to go ahead with the process. And the process, is still to be shaped and formed. I was hearing real concerns from some of our teachers and the CEA leadership that somehow they're going to be relegated to a secondary status in this process. I don't believe that that's true collaboration. So, I think, while some of the things that we end up talking about may be really difficult, I think it is important for everybody to be in the room and at the table. And that said, personally, as a board member, we have not had enough time together as a board to talk about this. We, as you said, because of people's schedules, we just have not had that opportunity that I think we need. We had very valuable meetings, the 2-on-2, with CEA and the group, the leadership group. And those were really valuable. And now I do feel very strongly that we as a board need to just talk to each other and feel out where we each are. I think that's going to be crucial. And I know that it may seem like it's a little slow, but it's the best that we've been able to do. We will have a retreat coming up, or in advance coming up, and I think that will be a valuable opportunity for us to sit with each other. Because if we don't do that, then I think this process is in trouble. So we have to start there. And I look forward to that. But I have confidence in you and your ability to pull together this process on our behalf and to include the stakeholders that need to be at the table to be there. In my work life, I did a lot of very difficult work with divorce and custody, and it is so hard sometimes to talk through really difficult issues when people have, we're not always going to be in agreement on every single thing. But, I think if we can trust in a healthy process and we have trust in each other, then I think we can do this. And so I don't think any of us are trying to stall or slow or anything, but please allow us as a board the time that we need to talk to each other. And this is new for all of us. And we just really need that in order to fully move forward with confidence.
Thank you. Mr. Bryant?
Dr. Gurley, in you seeking seeking us to vote to authorize you to speak on behalf of the board, would it be possible during our retreat if we had time together as a board to kind of talk about this and just share our feelings among each other? And I do agree some of Dr. Kraft, we just haven't had time to sit down together as a board to hash out our feelings and what direction we need to go with in terms of this, collective bargaining resolution. Would that be possible?
Absolutely, it will be possible. And, we are also working, you'll receive communication from Ms. Thacker so that we can gather long before, the retreat to have the conversations, because I think that also shows CEA and our teachers, not just CEA, our teachers, that we are making a good faith effort to meet sooner rather than later. So, being able to pull together some time in the next few weeks in May as a board of 7 will provide that opportunity for you to have those conversations even before the retreat, where you'll be able to then, just provide more information, because that's what the people want at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bryson-Morsberger?
I just would like to just echo what everyone has said already, that I was under the assumption that this was the starting point. And so there can be task force, there can be another school board member, we can add that in. And I always, maybe it needs to be spelled out, but it was always, from what I was taking from it, was that the Teachers Association would be part of this, would always be at the table during this part. And that for full transparency, from my perspective, I thought that Dr. Gurley is working with you all, the teachers, to say, hey, these are the board's concerns and these are his concerns, and then getting all of that together into one resolution, and then saying, like, what do we have and what can we take out? So if it comes across that teachers weren't being included, that wasn't the intention from my perspective. So I apologize if that's how it came across, but I'm just thinking that this is a starting point. And as a board, we haven't had a lot of time to sit down together and discuss it. And I believe in transparency 100%. So when I look at the resolution, in my mind, I've had some experience with HR and a bargaining, like with unions and bargaining agreements and things like that. So in my mind, our resolution would have been a resolution just to recognize the teachers, the association's ability to form a union. I didn't know that our resolution was going to include lots of specifics that I thought would be hammered out later. So for me personally, I thought that the resolution recognizing the ability to form a union, that was one thing, that it was going to be a small resolution, and that all of the details that are laid out here in this document, the resolution that we were given, was what we would hammer out with the union once, So that's the only hesitation for me, is that we've never done this before. And so we need to understand, because in my experience, contracts are very specific to what working conditions we're going to be addressing. And so looking at this as a board member, it's hard to understand all of the things without more meetings and more consultation. So I'm not trying to hold up the process. I'm just trying to make sure that we understand the resolution that we would be voting for. And that's it.
And I also think too, with the recommendation from Ms. McKeever of having a board member participating alongside, CEA members, it also takes away that perspective or the perception that this is about me, that board members get firsthand knowledge of what's being said. And so it's not secondhand information from me. And so there is the dialogue between CEA members and at least one board member. But I will also, and I guess I can preface that by saying that, one person doesn't speak on behalf of the board. I don't speak on behalf of the board. And so those are just the types of things we have to take into consideration as we're meeting, that those are some of the challenges. And those are the things that we don't yet know, like what do these things mean? Like, well, while one person may want to see those things, does the other person want to, and vice versa. And so these are the types of things we'll work out, and we'll do it together, and we'll be better on the other side together.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think just listening to the different comments from board members, I mean, I think it's apparent that we all are in different places as far as just an understanding. And as you have said, these are uncharted waters. And we have a lot to learn. And so I think, due diligence, and it is our responsibility as a board, because this is very serious or very important and serious, that we need to understand it. And that if people have questions and there's a lack of knowledge about the process, that, I feel responsible, and I'm assuming the rest of the board does, is that we do really understand this going forward, and that we want to, and then recapping kind of the timeline and the process. I just want to remind everybody, and again, first, I do want to acknowledge and honor the voices of the teachers and the staff and the students and parents and community members who came up to share their comments and support for this process. But I do want to just remind everybody that back in January, Dr. Gurley did stand at that podium with Ms. Taylor as she read, and introduced this and kind of initiated the process for us. So I think that's huge in the sense that he stood there. I think, then next, the board members had the opportunity to meet 2 by 2 with Ms. Taylor and other representatives and wanted to do that. So, we've sat down at the table. We have all voiced our support of moving forward through this process. But again, there's a lot about the process that we don't understand yet. 21 days ago, you all came with your resolution and presented it to us, and we did receive it and your signature cards, and we've acknowledged that. So there was a letter, just for, again, transparency, there was a letter that Dr. Gurley sent acknowledging that. And we accept that. And so there are next steps, and we're trying to figure that out as we go. Here you are today, asking to work on the behalf of the board. And I think you've received some feedback from board members about what they would like as far, and I know, and there is no doubt in my mind that you took notes and you heard that, and will honor that. And also, including CEA reps in part of that process as we move forward. So I do think again that the concerns are very valid, that there's momentum out there and there's a desire from the teachers. But I also hope that you hear us and that we need to understand this. And we want to do it right, and we want to do it to the best of our ability. So please allow us to, continue on the path and do the best that we can to get there. And we will, I don't know if more transparency, I mean, we just ask Dr. Gurley, ask us if there's something that's not unknown. But my understanding is that, and as Dr. Kraft said, we have, as a board, an entire board, have not been able to sit down and speak with each other about this. And I think that definitely needs to happen. I think also I would like, Dr. Gurley to ask us, to meet as part of that process of gathering information. And I think you alluded to that as far as 2x2, so that you get some information and an idea of where we're at, and so that we can start to collate big questions, if there are things that we're unsure about, and then be able to share it back. A board member, working with you, or two board members working with you, as Ms. McKeever said, I think is very important, and I agree it's been valid. And then we will have an opportunity, I believe, at the end of this month to meet as a board. And there was a plan, I think it's still scheduled out to sit and have our first opportunity to talk. So we are moving forward. But again, today is day 21, and we appreciate your patience with us as we try to figure that out. So unless there's anything else at this point anybody would like to say, I believe Dr. Gurley has asked that we take action on this.
I move that we authorize Dr. Gurley to begin negotiating, is that the wording? The resolution with the CEA and other community and staff members and board members. Yeah, that's start that.
Not negotiating.
Not negotiate, just authorize the work on that resolution.
I authorize the work on the resolution to include members of the CEA, other community members, staff members, and at least one board member.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So for the record, Mr. Morris and Ms. McKeever opposed that? Opposed that?
I'm sorry.
I did
no,
not
we didn't
oppose that.
oppose.
I
Oh, you
my-
raised your hand when I said opposed.
No, it was up. But
It might have
Well,
been
it was
a
a delay. It was a video delay, sorry.
I vote
Okay,
for
for
it
correction.
since I moved for it.
All eyes, sorry. Technology. All right, thank you, sir. All right, next, Dr. Baptist, we have our COVID update.
Good evening again. I guess I could just say in my update, we still have COVID in the community. And sit down, because that's where we are. If you've watched the news, you've seen that we've got areas of our country, areas of our state that are still spiking somewhat with COVID. Here in Charlottesville, I just got numbers at 4 o'clock this afternoon or sometime around that from Blue Ridge to show that last week, the city of Charlottesville, not Charlottesville schools, but the city of Charlottesville had 143 cases, which per 100,000, which is the way they generally record these, was 307. So that's still a surge from where we've been. But within Charlottesville City Schools, if you could go back one slide. Since we were here last month, we have had an increase in cases. We are continuing to do our PCR testing in all of our schools. And this week, we only found one positive case out of all the testing that we did throughout the school. So we were very pleased about that. We are still working with the health department for their weekly calls. That's not listed up there, but we are still doing that. We have been asked by the Virginia Department of Health if we are interested in continuing to participate in the testing program that we've been doing through the summer and into next school year. And I have said that we would be interested in doing that. So we will be continuing the PCR testing, next molecular in our schools as long as they will allow us to do it. It sounds like it will at least start the 22-23 school year. I don't know whether it will go all the way through, but we will still do that. And looking at all of the cases that have been reported to us through our system of reporting them, if you look at our dashboard, you can see the last couple of weeks, there's been a little bump in there. The week of April 22nd, we had 20 cases within the school division. Last week, we had 31. And through this afternoon, we've had 24. So we're higher than we were during some of March, but still not that high. I know Ms. Bryson Morseberger has asked a couple times about hospital counts. I just checked the UVA hospital census, and they're at 32 at this point. So the hospitalization is up from where it has been, but it's still not nearly as high as it was at one point. And I just checked the UVA numbers as well, 205 cases at UVA, active cases, which could be anywhere within the 10-day. So that's kind of where we are. And then on the next slide, which I know is very hard to see, instead of doing what Virginia Department of Health had been doing with the red, yellow, and green, if you've been following it, we know that CDC has changed, and we are now following the CDC metric rather than one from VDH. This is updated every Thursday night by 8 o'clock. And I can tell you by 7:30 tonight, it was not updated, so it may change in the next few minutes. But this past week, we moved from the green to the yellow, which was the moderate, because of the larger numbers within our community. So that's where we sit now. In 30 minutes, we may be back down to green, or we may still be in the yellow. I'm not sure. But we are still encouraging families to mask, and our staff are still wearing masks. So I would ask if you've got any questions.
Ms. McKeever, do you have any questions?
Dr. Baptist, that's such great news about the testing. I often wonder how many positive results we get in that testing. The testing is, in my mind, I'm so glad. It feels maybe redundant to do it when you only get one, but I am so grateful and relieved as a mom who has to get regular COVID tests for my kids because they're sick. So I'm just always so grateful for that testing program. And what I'm very grateful to hear that the VDH is going to continue to allow that testing program to continue, hopefully into the fall. And, you know, I really appreciate parents and children doing that testing program and also masking. I feel like more, I mean, you know, as pessimistic as I was in April, I feel so grateful that, you know, how many of our students and are continuing to mask and understanding that we protect each other by doing that. So I am relieved that I mean, as much as like the emails get very worrisome, you know, but I did have one question. The Google Doc did not update for like 3 days. Was there an issue this week, or can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I updated it Tuesday before I left work, and I admit I did not do anything last night, but there were not but like one or two. And then I updated this afternoon. So there was no glitch except we didn't have many cases in there, and I just didn't do it last night. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's just helpful to know that, like, because we have obviously people watching those numbers pretty closely, as do I when my kids are sick. So,
well, Ms. McKeever, I try not to update it during the day because we want to allow the administrators to have time to make the notifications to families. Yes. And I did it a little earlier Tuesday, and then I'm sorry, I just forgot last night.
Oh, there's no need to apologize. I do appreciate your work there. I just wanted to know. So that's helpful. And again, thank you for all the hard work, and so grateful for our community and for that testing program and our students continuing to mask. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
I'm very, very grateful for the testing, and I don't see it redundant at all. I think that's one wonderful use of our tax dollars at work. And the fact that we are making it so convenient for families and staff, the program has far outrun whatever my expectations. So I'm very glad we're doing it.
Thank you. Ms. Dooley.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Morse?
No questions.
I'll mix it up. Mr. Bryant?
And just thank you, Beth, and glad we will continue to have the testing program. And so happy to see our children continuously wearing their masks. And
Ms. Bryson Morseberger?
I don't have any, well, I do have one follow-up. Thank you for the hospitalization numbers. I have a new number for you now. I've heard tell, but I can't crack the CDC website, that there's wastewater COVID level monitoring. I don't know if it's for Albemarle or for Charlottesville or just for all Virginia, but that would be helpful to know.
I'm getting a nod from Ms. Powell. It's not in Charlottesville.
It's Albemarle, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking it was Albemarle as
Site,
well.
but it is on the upswing, on the uptick.
At the last Blue Ridge Health call that I set it on, the numbers are going up. It's the Moores Creek location, which does cover a portion of Charlottesville citizens as well as Albemarle. But it was stated by the health department officials, they're not allowed to release the data specifically. So that data is, it's not that you can't crack it, it's not publicly available. But there was a statement that it has been increasing, and that testing of the wastewater does continue.
I was on that same call that she was on, but I was really sick that day. And so I vaguely remember hearing that, but we have another meeting Tuesday, so I will listen out for anything they tell us about that.
And then the other question is the UVA projection models. Are we in a surge time? Are we going up? What, is there any update on that?
I did not look at the UVA model before I came up here. I will look at it in just a second. I know they had at one point predicted that we would be in a minor surge, but at this point, I think we're looking more at where we are. And I don't think anybody can fully predict as much now where we're going because of the difference in variants and whatnot. But as soon as I sit down, I will check that UVA model.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No questions. Just gratitude for everything that's going on, everything that we're doing. And I think the testing program is remarkable. So, and thank you for all your hard work.
Sure, thank you.
And you don't have to always do stuff at night. You know, you can take a night off.
That is fine.
Okay.
Fine. I'm glad
You have my permission to do
Thank
it.
you. My cat doesn't mind.
I love when I click on the dashboard and I see Beth Baptist's little emoji on there, and then she clicks off and I click off. And I don't know how many times you
I'm trying to
looked at
figure out
it.
who the leaping lizard or the
I know.
whatever else is on there.
I know. Thank you. And I too am grateful for the testing and encourage everybody to take advantage of that if you can, because we are really lucky to have that here within the schools and within our community. And yes, as always, continue to recommend masks, please. And again, I'm you know, as Ms. Bryson Morseberger sometimes says, you know, I work in HR. Well, I'm going to say I work in healthcare. So I unfortunately see a lot of really sad cases, and it's happening. I mean, things are exploding right now with my patients and also related, you know, to them very closely. So please be careful, everybody.
I'm still proud to report that none of our cases have been hospitalized throughout the entire time. We've had people who have felt terrible, but no one has had to be hospitalized.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. I'm so grateful for that. And I do remember a year or two ago when, you know, this was just kind of starting, and when we were working towards getting people back in the buildings and hearing at the time Superintendent Dr. Atkins say, you know, it's not a matter of if we get a case in the school, but when. And it was just, you know, and again, being in healthcare, I would have known, but it was a big thing for me to kind of have to just realize and wrap my head around the fact that all of the work we were doing and that we have done and continue to do is really to maximize the health and the safety of staff and our students. And so, yes, we are very grateful and lucky that there haven't been those hospitalizations. But again, this isn't going away anytime soon, I don't believe, and there are still a lot of unknowns about long-term effects of this. So please take care of each other, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Baptist. All right. We had the board response to written reports, and now we will move to our second opportunity for comments from members of the community. So again, if you will come forward, state your name and address, limit yourself to 3 minutes, please. And we have a guest speaker.
Hello, I did not sign up to speak, but I did learn something that I wanted to bring to your attention because I thought you would want to join me in giving thanks to Max Marcilla for such great service to our community. I learned tonight that this is his last board meeting with us.
Oh.
So let's wish him all the best as he moves to Northern Virginia for a new opportunity. And I just didn't want him to get away without us saying thank you.
Thank you, Max.
I'll very, very quick. Thank you. I came here and the board meetings were online on Zoom. The discussions were whether school would be in person or virtual or anything. And you were all very receptive to questions, answering questions, discussing and explaining the decisions you were making. So from that moment to tonight, thank you for answering my questions and helping me do my job. So I figured the best way to announce my job was at a Charlottesville school board meeting. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Best wishes.
Really want to say thank you for a job well done there and keep an ear out for that name.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Good luck, Dr. Baptist.
Good evening, I'm Beth Baptist. I live at 1562 Terry Road. The UVA model, it does show an increase until June the 26th, and then we'll show a decrease after that.
Johnny on the spot. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Thank you. Public comment.
Thank you again. As you all were discussing the proposal for the process of writing a collective bargaining resolution, there were a number of things that I heard that were somewhat confusing to me. And I just want to say that this doesn't have to be that complicated. It's very simple that we involve the teachers from the beginning of the process. When the resolution gets written, we are at the table to write that resolution. And I want to just offer my sincere thanks to Ms. McKeever for just stating a very clear and straightforward amendment to the resolution that Dr. Gurley is authorized to begin the process of writing the collective bargaining resolution with the participation of representatives of the CEA. And when Dr. Gurley, just one nitpick I have, the teachers and the CEA are one. It's not the CEA and the teachers. We are the union. We are the CEA. And I very much look forward to sitting down with you and whoever it is from the board to work on this resolution. And I hope that we hear from you very, very soon because we stand here ready to begin work. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Hi. Forgive me for not having something more formal, so I'm going to be looking down a lot, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you to each one of you for hearing us and acknowledging the voices and the people you saw here and for moving forward. We're optimistic that after our 2x2 conversations that we had with you, that after you have time together as a body, you will come to a consensus about bargaining and moving forward. We're very optimistic about that. Just to clarify, the resolution that we're working to craft together, the one that we were discussing, is not going to bargain for a contract. What that resolution will do is have all of the stakeholders together to set the parameters, to set a framework through which bargaining will occur. So we're not going to be working towards a contract in the next few weeks when we sit down together to start this process. We are also available. Beck is available. I'm available anytime. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. But again, thank you all so much. We're grateful for the support.
Any other comments from the media center? We have somebody on Zoom. We have, I believe, Miss Beth Ike, who would like to speak.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I want to thank folks starting for all of the amazing COVID prevention and testing. That's been such a giver of peace of mind, having my child tested once a week, providing peace of mind for both of us, really, which is a good segue towards mental health. I want to applaud the district for its focus on the mental health of our community as a whole. Our third grader has really struggled this year, and we're fortunate enough to have access to mental health resources outside of school, but she tends to compartmentalize issues and still thinks the best person to talk about things that bother her at school are with the people at school. And she's really relied heavily on meeting with a counselor there, and I really thank the district for their energy in that regard and all the resources that have been made available, and hope that this continues. I want to thank y'all for your attention to our teachers' mental health. Our teachers deserve every support we can give them in this regard and others, which brings me to collective bargaining that they're asking to be a part of. And as the gentleman stated just prior to now, this doesn't need to be complicated. I really appreciate the board reflecting back the comments of the teachers that we heard in the beginning and encouraging their full participation in this process. I think transparency and trust. Transportation is good. That's another one, but I'll leave that out for now. But transparency and trust are really the place we need to build from moving forward. And I encourage Dr. Gurley to do all he can to really go from a place of transparency and trust. And I look forward to seeing how this growth of working together happens. And thank you guys. We're so proud to be Charlottesville City School parents.
Thank you. Anyone else in the waiting room? All right. Anybody else? Last chance. All right. Thank you, everybody. We now will move on to board member comments. Dr. Kraft? Yep, I'll start with you.
Well, I would just like to actually congratulate Catherine Knott, who's sitting back there, for the awards she won for her education reporting. And I mean, I think we're really lucky to have you, Catherine, in our community, and really appreciate the attention that you've given to our priorities, you know, and to what's going on in the city schools. So congratulations, well deserved.
All right, Mr. Bryant.
No comment.
Ms. Bryson Morseberger.
I have no comments at the time.
All right.
This time, thank you.
Mr. Morse.
No comments. Thank you.
Ms. Dooley.
I just wanted to put a plug in. I got a lovely postcard in the mail for the annual art showcase that's happening right now. So would encourage folks to go and take a look. I found myself falling down a rabbit hole in a good way of looking through some really impressive student artwork. So please take a look if you haven't done so already. So to that end, thanks to our art teachers on Teacher Appreciation Week, as well as all of our teachers and nurses as we head into the chaos of the end of another school year. there's ceremonies and field trips and celebrations and graduation and promotion and everything. And none of that can occur without, just the immense involvement and dedication of our teachers and staff. So a huge thank you to everyone who's making the year wrap up so nicely and provide some really special experiences for students. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dooley. And then we'll go to superintendent comments.
I think I have no comments.
Oh,
Just
I'm
FYI.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't-
got thrown
I'm
off.
not gonna-
It's time to
I
give
mean-
my dog her medicine.
Okay, well, you can go.
All right, Ms. McKeever, sorry about that.
Oh, I can't top Miss Dooley. That was a great final comment, so I'm gonna take her comment. Thank
Yeah,
you.
ditto. That's why I said, and Dr. Gurley, you're up. No, thank you.
I just want to, I talk to my mom every evening and she says, are you being good to those teachers? And I just want to say happy Teacher Appreciation Week, that we do appreciate you. We value you each and every day. You need more than 1 week out of the year. And I know we talked a lot about mental health, and Mother's Day is this weekend. And so if you have the privilege of having an earthly mother, then, make sure you celebrate her. But then we know that there are people who don't have moms, and just make sure that you're checking in on them and making sure that they're okay. Because, we always forget about those types of things. So just thank you all. It's been a great meeting. That's it.
Thank you. And now work session wrap up. Dr. Baptist?
3 items to go back and review the professional learning grant that was talked about. And I didn't put them all in here, but I took a couple of notes from the safety report for different questions to make sure Kim has those for any follow-up, and then to check on wastewater data as it's available.
Thank you. Anything else that all right. Upcoming meetings, we have our next board member, which will be here on Thursday, June 2nd at 5 p.m. And I think that's it. And I will adjourn the meeting. Everybody have a good night and stay safe.